Chapter 732. Chu Xiu had to admit that he had underestimated the existence of the true fire spirit refinement state for the first time. It should be said that he had underestimated the existence of the true fire spirit refinement state, or rather, he had underestimated Fang Jinwu. Although it was rare to become a martial Dao grandmaster as a rogue cultivator in the Jianghu, there were still some. There were even many sect leaders of large sects who were rogue cultivators themselves. After becoming a martial Dao grandmaster, they began to establish their own sects and accept disciples. However, it was extremely rare for a lone cultivator to achieve the true fire spirit refinement state. This state itself represented a kind of pinnacle. Using the fire of inner energy evolved from the true martial core to temper the mind, not only could one achieve the true power of heaven and earth, but the pain involved was also unimaginable. The intestine-severing goo was so terrifying that it made the people of Jianghu pale because of the pain. But now, Fang Jinwu had been poisoned by the intestine-severing goo for such a long time, but he did not even make a sound. It was obvious how strong his endurance was. Perhaps compared to the pain of the fire of inner energy tempering the mind, the pain caused by the intestine-severing goo might not even be comparable to the former. Chu Xiu. You're courting death. Fang Jinwu walked forward step by step. The surrounding power of heaven and earth had been condensed to the extreme by him. His hands were raised, but it was as if he was holding up a mountain. With every step he took, a huge crack appeared on the ground. Although Fang Jinwu did not seem to have any changes on the surface, the intestine-severing goo had already gnawed on his body. The true fire spirit refinement state was not afraid of the intestine-severing goo, but the prerequisite was that there was time to expel it. Otherwise, even a powerhouse from the Great Light Temple who had cultivated the indestructible golden body would not be able to withstand the gnawing of these goo. Therefore, he could not afford to delay any longer. If he did not kill Chu Xiu, he might really die here. Fang Jinwu's martial arts leaned towards the Buddhist lineage, but it was not completely part of the Buddhist lineage. He was not a monk, so naturally, he would not recite Buddhist scriptures. However, the extremely fierce aura of his martial arts was very similar to the martial arts of the Great Light Temple. This move of Fang Jinwu's was called the mountain shifting seal. There was no mountain in his hand, but the shape and intent of the mountain had been condensed. As the seal descended, the whistling wind was like a violent storm. The invisible mountain range blotted out the sky and blocked out the sun, directly sealing off the area of several thousand feet around Chu Xiu. If a martial artist with a weak body was struck by this seal, he would probably be turned into a pile of meat paste on the spot. Chu Xiu's eyes revealed a crazy desire to fight. In fact, there weren't many warriors who could be his opponent at this stage. Apart from the little celestial master Zhang Qingzhen, who else among the newly advanced martial Dao grandmasters was worthy of fighting him? Those mediocre grandmasters of the older generation could not even withstand a single blow. Only people like Su Du, Xiang Wu, or Chu Wuji, who had already stood at the peak of the martial Dao grandmaster realm, could be considered as Chu Xiu's opponents. However, Chu Xiu had not really fought with them so far. Chu Xiu had exchanged a few blows with Su Du, but that was not considered a fight. It could only be considered as a test. However, Chu Xiu had crossed an entire realm to fight someone at the true fire spirit refinement realm head-on. It was a rather crazy thing to do. In fact, it was not unheard of for a martial Dao Grand Master to fight someone at the true fire spirit refinement realm, but it was just rare. Chu Wuji had done something like this before. It was said that he had come to the northern Yen to seek revenge, but he was repelled by a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator from the northern Yen imperial court. There was also Xiang Wu, who had fought with the true fire spirit refinement realm patriarch of the Huangfu clan. Although he was at a disadvantage, it was not embarrassing. Of course, there was also Chenqing Di, but Chenqing Di's strength had always been a mystery in the Jianghu. Some people even said that he was already comparable to a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator. The others had all suffered at the hands of a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator. Only Qinqing Di could make a true fire spirit refinement realm cultivator concede before him. As the mountain shifter seal fell, the immense pressure even caused the ground under Chu Xiu's feet to crack. It was an invisible mountain, but it was as heavy as 1,000 caddies. Chu Xiu had already unsheathed the heavenly demon dance in his hand. The blade of the sword bloomed with a ghastly blood-red glow and a sinister demonic aura. As the sword slashed down, it was as if it could split the mountains and split the seas. The surging sword intent tore through everything. One man and one sword, with an indomitable momentum, slashed the huge mountain apart. 7 limits, sea breaker. The might of the heaven engulfing earth decimating 7 limits originated from the power of the heavens and the earth. Even though Chu Xiu had yet to reach the true fire spirit refining stage, this slash of his possessed the might to tear apart the heavens and the earth. The violent sound of stellar energy was like a thunderclap. Chu Xiu immediately felt a great force attacking him. Even the heavenly demon dance in his hand let out a strange sound. With a furious roar, the power of the sword finally slashed the mountain shifter seal apart. However, at this moment, Chu Xiu's arms were trembling. Even his heavenly demon dance had started to crack. Suppressing the flush on his face caused by the power vibrating his internal organs, Chu Xiu glanced at the heavenly demon dance in his hand. His expression couldn't help but change slightly. A slight crack had actually appeared on the blade of the heavenly demon dance. One must know that although the heavenly demon dance was not a god weapon, it was an existence between a god weapon and a precious weapon. Although it wasn't a god weapon and didn't have a weapon spirit, it was forged by master weapon refiner Mo Yezi using the heavenly demon order of the Kunlun devil cult. Its sharpness and toughness were even stronger than ordinary god weapons. In the end, a crack had appeared on the heavenly demon dance after this attack. One could imagine how powerful the mountain shifter seal was. On the other hand, when Fang Jinwu saw Chu Xiu take on his attack head-on, or rather, take on the mountain shifter seal, his expression changed slightly. At the same time, his face turned pale. Within his body, the intestine-severing parasite was constantly devouring his qi and blood, causing his already aged body to feel his life force weakening at every moment. Just now, he had forcefully absorbed so much qi of heaven and earth into his body. Just as Chu Xiu had said, he was not only accumulating strength for himself, but also for the intestine-severing goo. This was no different from quenching one's thirst with poison. Fang Jinwu's condition could fool others, but it couldn't fool Chu Xiu, who had the heaven's sun gazing at air. He looked at Fang Jinwu and smiled. "Elder Fang, you should stop holding on at a time like this. The intestine-severing parasite has already entered your heart. Even if you have the cultivation of the true fire spirit refinement realm, you won't be able to get rid of it. But before that, I can kill you." Fang Jinwu took a step forward, and his face was filled with rage. That rage seemed to have materialized, condensing into the shadow of a glaring Vajra behind him. The flames of rage seemed to be able to pierce through the world. At the same time, Fang Jinwu's entire body glowed with a golden light. That was not just a simple protective layer of righteous qi. The golden light had even sunk into Fang Jinwu's body. Chu Xiu's heaven sun gazing at air could clearly sense that the intestine-severing parasite had been devouring Fang Jinwu's qi, blood, and meridians. However, with the appearance of this golden light, the intestine-severing parasite was unable to devour it. The indestructible golden body. What is the Great Light Temple doing? Fang Jinwu's appearance easily made people think of the Great Light Temple's ultimate body-tempering secret technique, the indestructible golden body. In reality, the indestructible golden body was not a technique. Instead, it was a state that could be achieved by cultivating a body-tempering technique to the extreme and combining it with the Great Light Temple's secret technique. Therefore, as long as a warrior from the Great Light Temple was able to cultivate a body-tempering technique to the extreme, theoretically speaking, they would be able to cultivate the indestructible golden body. However, this secret technique was the Great Light Temple's secret. Even if Fang Jinwu had a good relationship with the Great Light Temple, he should not have been able to obtain the indestructible golden body. However, at that moment, Chu Xiu did not have the time to think so much. Fang Jinwu took a step forward, and the glaring Vajra shadow behind him came crashing down with a demon-subduing pestle in its hand. The immense power was like the collapse of mountains and rivers, and it was extremely majestic. There were already cracks on the heavenly demon dance, but Chu Xiu did not dare to use it anymore. He did not want to completely destroy the weapon that he had used for so many years. Chu Xiu's figure retreated hurriedly, and the soul-destroying arrows were shot out consecutively. His mentality was condensed crazily as if it was free, but it was completely burned by the raging flames on the glaring Vajra. At that moment, Fang Jinwu chanted in Sanskrit. It was not the Great Light Temple's 9 transformation lion roar, but it was a similar martial art. The surrounding heaven and earth seemed to tremble, and it shook Chu Xiu so much that he could not even condense his mentality. Even his qi and blood were unstable, and he had the urge to vomit blood. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the demon-subduing pestle in Fang Jinwu's hand came crashing down, and its power was like the sky was falling. The demon-subduing power of the glaring Vajra was too strong. This was the suppression of the realm, and it forced Chu Xiu to be unable to use demonic techniques. Once he used them, he would be restrained to death. However, since he could not use demonic techniques, he would use Buddhist techniques to fight it head-on. Chu Xiu's fast and slow 9 words formula frantically formed seals. The 9 seals merged into one, and like a roulette, it shone around Chu Xiu's body and blasted out continuously, colliding with Fang Jinwu's glaring Vajra. A powerful force seeped out of his body, and Chu Xiu's arms even made a cracking sound. In terms of physical cultivation, even though Chu Xiu had both cultivated the Great Vajra divine power and the 9 heavens demonic golden body, he was still inferior to Fang Jinwu, who had cultivated the indestructible golden body. Boom! A loud sound was heard, and Chu Xiu's figure was directly blasted into a small hill at the side, and the small hill was directly smashed into pieces. Cough, cough. Chu Xiu coughed as he stood up from a pile of rubble in a sorry state, and there was a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth. It seemed like it had been a long time since he had fought with someone to such a sorry state. The true fire spirit refinement realm was really not easy to kill. Fang Jinwu's body shone with golden Buddhist light, but his eyes were filled with a strong murderous intent, as if he wanted to swallow Chu Xiu alive. With the support of the indestructible golden body, he had indeed seriously injured Chu Xiu, but the intestine-severing parasite in his body had not given up on gnawing at his internal organs. Even if he killed Chu Xiu now and forced out the intestine-severing parasite, his vitality would be greatly damaged, and he, who was already old, would not live for long. Chapter 733. True Fire. When a spirit refinement cultivator attacked, it was said to be able to shatter mountains. It was extremely terrifying. The other warriors wanted to watch, but they did not dare to get close. They could only watch from afar and listen to the commotion. In fact, Mei Qinglian and the others could even feel the intense movements of the battle in the small town's restaurant. Huangfu Weiming was the first to admit defeat. In fact, he was not admitting defeat. It was just that his relationship with Fang Jinwu was such that there was no point in continuing the fight. However, after seeing Huangfu Weiming admit defeat, Pang Hu still felt that he had not had enough. After Huangfu Weiming admitted defeat, Mei Qinglian also had a result. Jing Yuan would not admit defeat, but he really could not fight anymore. After all, he was old, and his opponent was Mei Qinglian, who was considered an expert in the Hidden Devil sect. Even if his Buddhist dharma was profound enough to restrain the chaste girl great technique, he could not hold on for long. He did not have enough strength. Seeing that Jing Yuan had stopped, Mei Qinglian did not kill him. She was not Chu Xiu, who dared to kill anyone when he went crazy. Although Jing Yuan was not famous in the Great Light Temple, he was still an eminent monk of the older generation. Their seniority was there. Under unnecessary circumstances, killing Jing Yuan would only cause trouble. There was no benefit. Therefore, after the two of them gave up resisting, Mei Qinglian and Pang Hu looked at each other and immediately chased in the direction of the commotion. Jing Yuan and Huangfu Weiming looked at each other. Their eyes flashed with different emotions. Huangfu Weiming was shocked. He was shocked that Chu Xiu had fought with Fang Jinwu to this extent. Jing Yuan, on the other hand, sighed. In the end, his old friend couldn't escape the fate of a cultivator and died in battle. Although he did not know the situation of the battle, he could feel the intensity of the battle and the faint sense of death. At this time, Chu Xiu was on Fang Jinwu's side. Fang Jinwu's whole body was shining with fierce Gang Qi and Buddhist light. All the power had been condensed in one point, like the moment before a volcano erupted. It was abnormally terrifying and made people tremble. Chu Xiu, I really didn't expect that one day, I would be forced to such an extent by a junior like you. Although Fang Jinwu was still surrounded by raging flames, his expression was unusually calm, as if he was narrating something that had nothing to do with him. Fang Jinwu had really come to terms with it. There was no winner in this battle. Both sides would suffer. At this moment, he had already used all his strength. Even if he killed Chu Xiu in the end, he would not be able to live for long. Fang Jinwu had experienced countless battles when he was young, so he was not afraid of death. He had even thought that he would either die of old age in the empty valley, or be hunted down by his old enemies and die in battle. However, he had never expected that his last battle would be against a junior like Chu Xiu. Fang Jinwu valued his own face more than his own life. It was not shameful to die in the hands of other martial artists in the true fire spirit refinement realm, but in the end, he died because of Chu Xiu. This kind of anger had surpassed his hatred. The shadow of glaring Vajra behind Fang Jinwu also underwent some changes under the condensation of his power. In the dazzling golden light, the image of glaring Vajra gradually turned into a Buddha shadow. However, the appearance of the Buddha shadow was very blurry, and it was impossible to tell which Buddha it was. When the Buddha shadow gradually became clear under the illumination of the Buddhist light, what appeared was Fang Jinwu's own appearance. Although Fang Jinwu cultivated Buddhist martial arts, he was not a Buddhist martial artist. Just like Chu Xiu, the Buddha that he understood and the Buddha that the Great Guangming Temple understood were completely different. Youth was full of ups and downs, and middle age was wasted. Fang Jinwu cultivated from a rogue cultivator to a northern Yen martial arts legend who could stir up a storm and even be treated with respect by the leaders of the major sections. He did not rely on worshipping Buddha. He himself was the Buddha in his heart. The Buddha shadow that was hundreds of feet tall and covered the sky suddenly fell. There was no sense of holiness, only pressure, boundless pressure, as if the Buddha had descended to the world to suppress everything. This was a move that Fang Jinwu had never used before. It was not because of anything else, but because this move that he had comprehended could easily affect his relationship with the Great Guangming Temple. In the eyes of the Great Guangming Temple, the true meaning of martial arts was an insult to the Buddha. Of course, the Great Guangming Temple would not fall out with Fang Jinwu just because of a technique, but it would definitely affect the relationship between the two parties. However, Fang Jinwu already knew that he did not have long to live. If he did not use this move now, he would not have another chance to use it. He was a person who was about to die, so why would he care about their relationship? The boundless Buddha shadow came crashing down, and everyone within a radius of a few miles could feel the powerful force. Some martial artists were shocked. Was this the power of the true fire spirit refinement realm? It was like a deity or a Buddha. There were even some ignorant commoners who had never been educated who immediately knelt on the ground, thinking that a deity or a Buddha had really appeared. Looking at the Buddha shadow in the distance, Jing Yuan chanted the name of Buddha and sighed at the same time. This old friend of his was probably going to appear in front of him soon. Meanwhile, the expressions of Mei Qinglian and Pang Hu, who were rushing in the direction of Chu Xiu, changed. Chu Xiu had probably gone too far this time, and he was really angry. Fang Jinwu, this old fellow, had not really made a move for more than a decade. He was already old, and he was even poisoned by the intestine-severing goo, but he was still so fierce. Chu Xiu did not expect this, and even Mei Qinglian did not expect it. She had thought that this matter was completely under Chu Xiu's control. Meanwhile, in the square, looking at the descending Buddha shadow that covered the sky, Chu Xiu could only sigh. Fang Jinwu's power had indeed exceeded his expectations, but things were still under control. Fang Jinwu had a trump card, but did he not have one? However, Chu Xiu had planned to study it thoroughly before using it, but now he was forced to use it in advance. Facing the descending Buddha shadow, boundless demonic aura gathered around Chu Xiu. The powerful demonic aura even dyed Chu Xiu's eyes black, causing the qi and blood in his body to boil. Together with his powerful mental strength, they all surged into his hands. Under the demonic aura, a ferocious-looking giant bow, surrounded by boundless black aura, was condensed. As the bow was knocked, two giant demonic aura hands condensed behind Chu Xiu. One held the bow, while the other three held the bowstring. As the bow was pulled to a full moon, a terrifying aura condensed in the demonic bow. Even Fang Jinwu, who no longer feared death, felt his heart tremble. The pitch-black demonic aura condensed in the demonic bow to form an arrow, but the arrow was extremely unstable, as if it was about to collapse. Seeing that the Buddha shadow was about to descend, Chu Xiu suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood essence, which merged with the boundless demonic aura, forming an evil arrow that shone with demonic aura and a scarlet color. The bow was pulled to a full moon, and the arrow burst forth. A deafening whistling sound rang out. Even the warriors who were more than 10 miles away could hear it. Everywhere the arrow passed, everything was destroyed, and everything was minced to pieces, leaving behind a deathly silent empty space. When the arrow hit the Buddha shadow, a pitch-black spot immediately appeared on the forehead of the Buddha shadow, which had just carried a shocking power. In the next moment, the pitch-black spot had already begun to spread, and the aura of destruction began to spread. In an instant, the golden Buddha shadow, which was still shining with Buddhist light, was now covered in black cracks. Finally, with a loud bang, it was completely extinguished. One arrow to destroy Buddha. In the past, the gods worshipped by the foreign sects used this arrow to penetrate Songyan city, and the cult master Dugu Weiwei used this arrow to destroy the world's top sect, Iron Emperor Castle. Now, Chu Xiu used the real pellet realm to fight against the true fire-refined spirit, and one arrow to destroy Buddha. Countless warriors in the distance looked at this scene dumbfounded. The powerful Buddha shadow that Fang Jinwu used before had already made him exclaim in his heart. The powerhouse of the true fire-refined spirit realm was like a Buddha, but in the next moment, they saw the terrifying scene of the arrow completely destroying the Buddha shadow. At this time, in the field, the demonic aura around Chu Xiu dissipated, and his face was frighteningly pale. In fact, if it wasn't a critical moment, Chu Xiu didn't want to use the Triple City extinguishing arrow. When facing Divine Lord Luo in the past, Chu Xiu once used a very authentic starting move in a blurred state, so he could barely use it, but it was not complete. But this Triple City extinguishing arrow, it was really the first time that Chu Xiu used it. He had pondered this arrow for a long time, and even he himself wasn't sure if he could use this arrow. If it weren't for Chu Xiu using his own blood essence as a guide to successfully condense the arrow, he would even be devoured by this arrow. At this time, standing opposite Chu Xiu, Fang Jinwu's face was also extremely pale. He looked at Chu Xiu and wanted to say something, but he couldn't say a word. Finally, his breath dissipated instantly, and he fell to the ground. The Buddha shadow just now was formed by his power and essence, and it was connected to his primordial spirit. Chu Xiu destroyed the Buddha shadow with the Triple City extinguishing arrow, and the destructive power carried by this arrow also entered Fang Jinwu's body, completely destroying the vitality in his body. A real pellet state martial artist killing a real fire spirit refinement state martial artist. This kind of record may have happened before, but in the past 100 years, only Chu Xiu could do this. It was just that at this time, Chu Xiu had no time to think about other things. The triple city extinguishing arrow drained all the power and true qi in Chu Xiu's body, along with his blood essence. It was not an exaggeration to say that Chu Xiu's vitality was greatly damaged. At this time, Mei Qinglian and Pang Hu also rushed over. Seeing Jinwu's body on the ground, both of their faces showed a shocked look. Chu Xiu actually succeeded in killing Fang Jinwu. But before they asked anything, Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Take me back to Jianghu Hall first." The two also saw that Chu Xiu's state was a little off, so they immediately took him away. Not long after they left, Jing Yuan, Huangfu Weiming, and some other onlookers also arrived. The horror in everyone's eyes couldn't be concealed. Master Jing Yuan sighed, walked forward, and closed Fang Jinwu's eyes that were still open. He sat beside him and began to chant Buddhist scriptures. "My old friend is still ahead of me." Chapter 734. Recently, a storm was brewing in the Jianghu. The righteous sects and the evil sects were in a constant state of chaos. However, the news of Chu Xiu killing Fang Jinwu was like a bomb. Everyone was so shocked that they did not know what to say. Fang Jinwu was an expert in the true fire spirit refinement state, an existence that stood at the peak of the Jianghu. However, he died in the hands of a junior like Chu Xiu. It should be known that the friction between the righteous sects and the evil sects had intensified. Both sides were engaged in a chaotic battle. More than one martial Dao master had fallen, but it was not to the point where a true fire spirit refinement state expert was injured. Now, Chu Xiu had killed an expert in the true fire spirit refinement state before the moon-worshipping church. Furthermore, Fang Jinwu was not a nameless person. He was a well-known figure in the Jianghu of the northern Yan kingdom. In the past, he had also traversed the Jianghu. Even in West Chu and Eastern Qi, he had a certain reputation. At the very least, the elders in these two places all remembered him. In the end, he had died at the hands of a junior like Chu Xiu. Of course, there were also many people who scolded Chu Xiu for being despicable and shameless. He had used a curse to weaken Fang Jinwu's strength. Otherwise, he would have been the one dead. However, in the Jianghu, the winner took all. Chu Xiu was alive and Fang Jinwu was dead. It was as simple as that. There was no point in using the curse. In other words, if Chu Xiu had been in someone else's place, they would not have been able to withstand a single blow from Fang Jinwu, who had been poisoned by the broken intestine curse. On the second day after Chu Xiu killed Fang Jinwu, the wind-sweeping tower's ranking list was updated. Chu Xiu had jumped more than 10 places, from the 35th place to the 24th place. He was ranked behind Yan Ji of the Windcloud Sword Mound. Back then, little celestial master Zhang Chengzhen had entered the ranking list before Chu Xiu. However, now, Chu Xiu had gone further than Zhang Chengzhen. Everyone could foresee that the gap would gradually widen. It was not that Chu Xiu had to be stronger than Zhang Chengzhen. Now that Dragon Tiger Mountain was sealed, Zhang Chengzhen could only cultivate on the mountain, while Chu Xiu could dominate the Jianghu. At this time, Chu Xiu was recovering in the martial suppression hall. After fighting with the true fire spirit refinement state expert, Chu Xiu had not only gained a lot of experience, but he had also been injured. While clashing with Fang Jinwu's inextinguishable golden body, many of Chu Xiu's bones had been shattered, and his internal organs had been injured. Finally, when he used the triple destruction city arrow, he used up all of his strength, and then paid the price of a mouthful of essence blood. He suffered a backlash and was in a miserable state. He basically wouldn't be able to recover without a month's rest. However, he wasn't worried because even though killing Fang Jinwu would cause a huge commotion, the impact it would cause would be minimal because no one would stand up for him. This was also the helplessness of the rogue cultivators. Although Fang Jinwu did not want to offend anyone, no one wanted to stand up for him. Chen Jinting had already been crippled by Ren Qianli. Chu Xiu didn't know if he was dead or not, and he didn't specially look for him. However, now that he was accused of killing his teacher, even if Chen Jinting didn't die, he would have to hide his identity for the rest of his life. Ren Qianli was experienced, but in fact, he was slippery. Chu Xiu had killed his master. Ren Qianli wanted to take revenge, but could he do so? In the past, when he was in the Northern Yan Imperial Court, his backer was not the big shots in the Northern Yan Imperial Court, but his master. Now that Fang Jinwu was dead, even his words in the Northern Yan Imperial Court were not as tough as before. In other words, his current status was not as important as Chu Xiu's. Therefore, it didn't matter if Ren Qianli was a coward or if he knew how to adapt to circumstances. In any case, when he wasn't absolutely confident, not to mention finding trouble with Chu Xiu, he would even try his best to avoid being seen by Chu Xiu. As for the Jianghu, no one would seek revenge for Fang Jinwu. Fang Jinwu's relationship with the Huangfu clan's patriarch was not bad, but it was only good. The Huangfu clan's patriarch would not seek trouble with Chu Xiu because of him. It was the same for the Great Guangming Temple. Chu Xiu had an agreement with Shudu that he would not initiate trouble. To be precise, it was Chen Jinting who first spoke nonsense in Yanjing City, which led to this series of bloody cases. Now that he was dead, the Great Guangming Temple's attention was not on the Northern Yan, so they would not care about it. Therefore, Chu Xiu could recuperate in peace and did not need to worry about other troublesome matters. After recuperating for half a month, Chu Xiu felt that his vitality had recovered a little. Only then did he take out the great soul-searching palm of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth to read it carefully. When he first obtained this technique, Chu Xiu did not even have time to read it carefully before he set out to kill Fang Jinwu. Now that he held the great soul-searching palm in his hand, even with Chu Xiu's composure, he could not help but feel a little excited. A single great soul-searching palm would naturally not make Chu Xiu so excited, but no one had managed to combine the 7 parts of the Great Compassion poem since ancient times. Therefore, Chu Xiu wanted to see what changes would happen after collecting all 7 parts of the Great Compassion poem. The great soul-searching palm of extinguishing heaven and destroying earth was one of the stronger techniques in the Great Compassion poem, but it was not the strongest. It could only be said to be the evilest. The great soul-searching palm was between a primordial spirit secret technique and a normal martial technique. When it was used, it would extract the soul and pull the opponent's spirit and primordial spirit. Weaker warriors would have their primordial spirit pulled out by the great soul-searching palm and die on the spot. It could be said to be unstoppable. Of course, this was only used against weaker warriors. Against stronger warriors, it could only serve as a distraction and would not be able to hurt them. For the current Chu Xiu, it was slightly useless. Perhaps it could be said that it was more useful in group battles. In a one-on-one fight, Chu Xiu felt that his soul-extinguishing arrow was more convenient. After completely imprinting the great soul-searching palm in his heart, Chu Xiu continued to evolve the remaining 6 parts of the Great Compassion poem in his mind. The 7 parts of the Great Compassion poem fused completely in Chu Xiu's mind. At that moment, a strange rhythm reverberated in Chu Xiu's mind. It was like an incantation, like the murmurs of an ancient demon god. Chu Xiu's vision had already sunk into darkness. What he did not know was that his body was involuntarily murmuring those words that sounded like an incantation. The next moment, a boundless blood rain fell from the darkness. Endless ghostly wails came from the sky. The wails made one's heart palpitate, as though they were about to explode. Pfft! Chu Xiu spat out a mouthful of fresh blood. The blood rain stopped, the ghostly wails dissipated, and light shone again. This feeling was very familiar to Chu Xiu because he had experienced it before. This was the backlash of a cultivation technique. The door to the seclusion chamber was pushed open. Mei Qinglian poked her head in. When she saw Chu Xiu in this state, she asked curiously, "What are you doing here? You're a weirdo to the point of vomiting blood during seclusion." Just now, Chu Xiu did not know that when he involuntarily murmured that spell, everyone in the entire Jianghu hall felt their hearts tighten. It was as though some evil and terrifying existence had descended. The feeling was very creepy. Mei Qinglian also felt the throbbing, so she came over to take a look. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "It's okay. It's just a backlash of a cultivation technique. I'll be fine after resting for a few more days." She glanced curiously at Chu Xiu. After hearing what he said, Mei Qinglian turned and left. Chu Xiu let out a sigh of relief. Although the expression on his face did not change, he was very satisfied in his heart. What did the backlash of a cultivation technique mean? It meant that the power of this cultivation technique was too strong. It was so strong that he could not control it in his current state. The power of the 7 parts of the Great Compassion poem combined into one was far beyond Chu Xiu's imagination. This cultivation technique was indeed comparable to those legendary peerless and supreme cultivation techniques. When the Great Compassion poem of heaven and earth intersecting in yin and yang was collected, the martial art was called the Great Compassion mantra of heaven and earth intersecting in demon weeping heaven. Among the 7 parts of the Great Compassion poem, there was no mention of this name. However, for some reason, when Chu Xiu completed the 7 parts of the Great Compassion poem, this name automatically appeared in Chu Xiu's mind, as if it was called this name. However, the power of this cultivation technique was too strong. It was so strong that Chu Xiu could not fully use it in his current state. After experiencing the backlash of the cultivation technique, Chu Xiu's own injury was very tragic. Therefore, it took Chu Xiu a few more days to recover from the injury that would normally take more than a month. After more than a month, Chu Xiu walked out of the seclusion chamber. Although it was dangerous to fight with a true fire spirit refinement realm expert, the rewards were also quite great. At Chu Xiu's level, it was possible to improve his strength through hard work, but it was far less effective than improving his strength through life and death battles. Moreover, the strength obtained through life and death battles was the most stable. There was no such thing as superficial strength. However, at the level of a martial Dao master, it was enough to establish a sect and guard a region. They were all big shots. Who wouldn't want to enjoy themselves? Why would they fight to the death with others? Chu Xiu called Mei Qinglian over and asked, "Did Ren Qianli make any movements during this period?" Mei Qinglian replied, "This fellow is very well behaved. He hid in the Northern Guard Army's barracks and refused to come out." "Are you going to kill him too?" "I was just asking casually." "Of course not." Chu Xiu shook his head. After all, Ren Qianli was still the great general of the 5 armies. If Chu Xiu killed him, Xiang Long wouldn't sit idly by. Of course, the premise was that Ren Qianli was well behaved and didn't come looking for trouble. Otherwise, Chu Xiu would rather fall out with the Northern Yen court and find a way to kill him. "Oh yes, Daoist Wuyang came over and left with some elixirs and other things," Mei Qinglian suddenly said. "That old thing is afraid." Chu Xiu sneered. Daoist Wuyang was previously unconvinced by Chu Xiu and even wanted to fight for the authority of the Jianghu Hall. However, after the news of Chu Xiu killing Fang Jinwu spread, Daoist Wuyang was indeed a little afraid. Although he didn't admit defeat directly, he indirectly expressed his attitude. He didn't expect Chu Xiu to be so ferocious that even a true fire spirit refinement realm expert died in his hands. Of course, Daoist Wuyang was more afraid of Chu Xiu's ruthless methods. He didn't care if Chu Xiu would be crazy enough to use these methods on him after he angered Chu Xiu. Chapter 735. Since Chu Xiu had just killed Fang Jinwu, an expert in the true fire refinement realm, his reputation was now at its peak in northern Yen. For the time being, there was almost no one looking for trouble. Therefore, after giving some instructions, Chu Xiu prepared to go to eastern Qi. His sky demon dance had cracks when he fought with Fang Jinwu. If he used it again, the cracks would get bigger and bigger, and eventually, the sky demon dance would be scrapped. This saber had been with Chu Xiu for a long time. Even ordinary god weapons did not have the attributes that the sky demon dance had with Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu could not bear to let it be scrapped like this. Therefore, Chu Xiu prepared to go to eastern Qi and ask the blacksmith master, Mo Yezi, for help in repairing the sky demon dance. The sky demon dance was originally created by Mo Yezi. Chu Xiu had only added a few ingredients to it. In the current Jianghu, the only person who could restore the sky demon dance was probably Mo Yezi. After giving instructions to the others, Chu Xiu immediately set off for eastern Qi. Outside the Ji State Prefecture of Changlin County, Chu Xiu felt a little emotional when he came here again. The Ji State Prefecture was the first prefecture he had visited after coming to eastern Qi. It was also here that he had obtained the demonic dance and was also involved in the God Armament Conference, as well as the Prince of Peace, Jiang Wenyuan, and a series of other matters. Now that a few years had passed, the Ji State Prefecture was not as prosperous as it used to be. When Jiang Wenyuan was still around, the Ji Province Prefecture was his fief. His reputation as the King of Peace and Joy was here, and Jiang Wenyuan had also sponsored many rogue cultivators in the Jianghu. Therefore, there were many martial artists who came to the Ji Province Prefecture to make a living. However, with the death of Jiang Wenyuan and the destruction of Prince Annal's residence, the Ji State Prefecture was no longer what it used to be. Chu Xiu did not stay long in the Ji State Prefecture. Instead, he went directly to the Mirror Lake Villa outside the Ji State Prefecture. There were many warriors outside the Mirror Lake Villa. Most of them came to ask Mo Yezi or the Mo family for help in forging weapons. However, it was extremely difficult to ask Mo Yezi to forge a weapon for him. Not only did one have to take out materials that could move Mo Yezi, but one also had to meet Mo Yezi's requirements. Therefore, most of the people in the pugilistic world did not have extravagant hopes of getting Master Mo Yezi's help. Even if they could get a disciple of the Mo clan to forge a few weapons for them, it would be fine. However, some of the Mo clan's famous master refiners were not easy to invite. Therefore, these people were trying to build relationships and put in good words in order to obtain a weapon forged by a Mo clan disciple. At this time, some people saw that Chu Xiu just went to the Mirror Lake Manor in a daze. He didn't even send any visiting cards or gifts. A group of people couldn't help but snicker secretly. Where did this idiot come from? Didn't he ask about the rules? Two disciples of the Mirror Lake Manor stood in front of Chu Xiu and politely asked, "May I ask why young master has come to our Mirror Lake Manor?" "I'm Chu Xiu, I want to see Grandmaster Mo Yezi." Most people who answered this kind of question would only say, "Which sect do I belong to, or what's my name?" However, Chu Xiu's answer was very arrogant. He directly said that he was Chu Xiu, as if everyone must know him. Moreover, he didn't say that he wanted to see Grandmaster Mo, but that he wanted to see him. A disciple of the Mo clan who was guarding the door showed a trace of anger on his face. After so long, he had never seen such an arrogant person. However, the other disciple of the Mo clan suddenly reacted and immediately pulled him back. He respectfully said, "So it's official, Chu. Please come in, I will inform the ancestor." Only then did everyone realize that the person in front of them was Chu Xiu of the Yinma clan. The one who had just killed a true fire spirit refinement expert in the northern Yen, Chu Xiu. However, as far as they knew, Chu Xiu should still be in the northern Yen. Why did he suddenly come to eastern Qi? Before the crowd could react, a disciple of the Mo clan walked out and said, "We have an important guest today." The Mirror Lake Manor is not receiving anyone else. Please leave. Hearing this, everyone present cursed Chu Xiu in their hearts. Why did he come to the Mirror Lake Manor instead of staying in the northern Yen? He was delaying their business. Meanwhile, in the Mirror Lake Manor, Mo Yezi was personally entertaining Chu Xiu. Mo Yezi asked someone to serve Chu Xiu a cup of tea and said, "I've heard about what happened to you in the northern Yen. TSK, I didn't expect you to have grown to such an extent. In the past, you, Fei Hong, and the others were all outstanding figures among the younger generation. Now, you're in a different world from them." Mo Yezi sighed with emotion. In fact, he had seen Chu Xiu's path. In the past, during the Divine Armament Convention, Chu Xiu was not considered to be at the top even amongst the younger generation. Later, when he rescued Luo Feiheng, Chu Xiu could already stand shoulder to shoulder with Ing Bailu and the others. But now, even the true fire spirit refinement expert, who stood at the peak of the Jianghu, had fallen at the hands of Chu Xiu. People couldn't help but feel that the world was changing too fast. It should be said that only Chu Xiu was moving too fast. Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "It's okay for others to praise you, but you can't think so yourself. I know my own strength. I was able to kill Fang Jinwu because he was unprepared. My opponent had been poisoned by the intestine-severing goo in advance, so I was able to kill him. However, the process was also full of danger. It took me so much effort to kill an old true fire spirit refinement realm expert. If I'm flattered by others, I'll find a true fire spirit refinement realm expert at his peak to fight. I'll probably die before I know it." Mo Yezi nodded. It was good that Chu Xiu had such a mentality. He was old and had seen many things. There were many martial artists in the Jianghu who rose quickly but fell even faster. Their strength and fame came too suddenly. As a result, they became arrogant and did stupid things. There were countless people who did stupid things. By the way, you didn't come to my Mirror Lake Manor just to see this old man, right? Mo Yezi's friendship with Chu Xiu was not that deep. He treated Luo Feiheng as his daughter. At this moment, he was so kind to Chu Xiu only because Chu Xiu was Luo Feiheng's good friend. Now that Chu Xiu came to find him, he didn't believe that Chu Xiu came just to reminisce. Chu Xiu took out the Sky Demon Dance and placed it in front of Mo Yezi and said, "Master Mo, you must remember this Sky Demon Dance. When you fought with Fang Jinwu, this saber was damaged. I just want Master Mo to take a look and see if you can repair it. You can tell me what materials you need and what price you need." Mo Yezi examined the cracks on the Sky Demon Dance and couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. TSK, the strength of your heavenly demon dance is already comparable to a divine weapon, and even stronger than the majority of divine weapons, but in the end, it was cracked by someone empty-handed. An expert in the true fire spirit refinement realm is really terrifying. After carefully examining it, Mo Yezi stroked his beard and said, "You are good friends with Fei Hong. Your Sky Demon Dance was also made by me before, so there is no need to mention the price. However, if you want to repair it, there are some difficulties. One of them is materials. You don't need to take ordinary materials. My Mirror Lake Manor has everything. However, the main body of your Sky Demon Dance is made from the Sky Demon Order of the Kunlun Devil Cult. If you use other materials of a lower grade, I'm afraid the power of the Sky Demon Dance will be affected. Secondly, you should have also discovered that your strength can be considered as an expert even among martial Dao Grand Masters. In terms of weapons, the Heavenly Demon Dance is a bit outdated. You must change it to a divine weapon to be able to exert your strength to the fullest." Chu Xiu frowned and said, "But if you want to nurture the Sky Demon Dance into a divine weapon, it will take too long. If you change to another weapon, not to mention the fact that a divine weapon is hard to find, it might not be as easy to use as the Sky Demon Dance. The Sky Demon Dance originally had the foundation of a divine weapon. It could be said that as long as Chu Xiu carefully nurtured it, it would definitely become a divine weapon in the future. However, the problem was that Chu Xiu's speed was rising too fast. Nurturing a weapon took at least 10 years. It was impossible for him to turn the sky demon dance into a divine weapon in just a few years. Mo Yezi thought about it and said, "That's right, I heard that you once obtained a hungry ghost Dao incarnation in the minor mortal realm?" Chu Xiu nodded. Although he hadn't used the hungry ghost Dao incarnation many times, once he did, it would definitely be noticed. Moreover, there were many people who saw the hungry ghost Dao incarnation in the minor mortal realm. "I have a way to quickly turn your sky demon dance into a divine weapon. That is to use your hungry ghost Dao incarnation as a weapon spirit and integrate it into the sky demon dance. A weapon spirit is not only forged and nurtured. Using an external object as a weapon spirit has existed since ancient times. However, it is very rare because there are very few things that can be used as a weapon spirit. Your hungry ghost Dao incarnation soul is suitable, so it depends on whether you are willing to do so." Chu Xiu heard this and immediately said, "Of course I am willing to." He himself hadn't used the hungry ghost Dao incarnation a few times. The power of that thing was not small, but it was also of little value. When facing experts, its power would be greatly reduced. Moreover, using this thing required Chu Xiu's mental strength to control it. There were too many limitations, so turning it into a weapon spirit was not a big deal. At this time, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He took out the hatred saber of the 7 demon sabers from the space secret box and said, "Master Mo, is it enough to integrate this saber into the sky demon dance as a material?" The 7 demon sabers' strength lay in the power of the saber intent to trigger the opponent's emotions and desires. Among them, Chu Xiu had completely grasped the saber intent of the hatred saber. Without the hatred saber, he could still use the saber intent to trigger the hatred. Therefore, whether the hatred saber was present or not did not matter. Mo Yezi picked up the hatred saber and instantly felt a chill run down his spine due to the intense hatred emanating from it. If it wasn't for the fact that he was also a martial Dao master, he would have been directly devoured by it. After observing it for a while, Mo Yezi sighed and said, "Not bad. This saber was refined using the forging methods of the ancient times. It's made of good materials. The hatred in it can also be integrated into your sky demon dance. It's enough to use as a material. It's even a little extravagant." Chapter 736. Mo Yezi had been in seclusion for many years. Under normal circumstances, he would rarely refine artifacts for others. However, this time, Chu Xiu really attracted his interest. Over the years, he had personally refined many precious weapons into divine weapons, and he had also personally refined some precious weapons into divine weapons. However, he had never inserted an artifact spirit into a divine weapon. It wasn't that Mo Yezi didn't know how to do it, but materials that could be used as artifact spirits were too rare. Moreover, no one would do something so extravagant. Of course, Chu Xiu was a weirdo, so he wasn't in the scope of this discussion. After summoning the human puppet, Chu Xiu gave the hatred saber and the human puppet to Mo Yezi. "Right, Grandmaster Mo, how long will it take to repair the heavenly demon dance?" Mo Yezi thought for a moment and said, "If it was a normal repair, then a few days would be enough. However, I need to insert the hungry ghost Dao incarnation into it and upgrade it to a divine weapon. This will take a long time. This is my first time experimenting with this method, so I can't say for sure. Maybe 1 or 2 months, or maybe 3 or 4 months. Don't worry, I'll send someone to inform you after it's done." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Many thanks, Grandmaster." Chu Xiu had a lot of martial arts. Without the heavenly demon dance, he wouldn't be able to use some saber techniques. However, his other martial arts wouldn't be affected. Just as Chu Xiu was about to leave, a person suddenly barged into the room. The Mo clan's rules were very strict. At the very least, none of Mo Yezi's children dared to barge in when Mo Yezi was receiving guests. Therefore, only Luo Feiheng dared to act so presumptuously in the Mirror Lake manner. Mo Yezi treated her like his own daughter and pampered her a lot. At the very least, he treated her better than his own son. Luo Feiheng was dressed in a tight moon-white warrior suit, revealing her graceful figure. There was no trace of makeup on her face, and she was even wearing a white jade crown on her head. With her hair tied up, she looked no different from a man. If one ignored her towering breasts, she could really compete with LV Fengxian to see who was more handsome. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows. After not seeing each other for a while, Luo Feiheng's strength seemed to have improved a lot. She had already reached the unity of heaven and man realm, and her aura was not weak either. It was just that she was dressing more and more like a man. She had probably completely let go of herself after leaving the Luo clan. After entering the house, Luo Feiheng was surprised to see Chu Xiu. Why are you here? I heard that you just killed a true fire spirit refinement realm expert. Shouldn't you be lying dead in the Jianghu hall now? Chu Xiu's face darkened slightly. What do you mean by lying on the ground? I'm just recuperating. Luo Feiheng sat beside Chu Xiu as if he was an outsider. She took the tea on the table and drank it in one gulp. It's about the same. Don't care about the details. By the way, I haven't asked you why you are here. Luo Feiheng said, of course, I'm here to ask foster father to help me forge a batch of weapons. Back in the Luo clan, ever since Mo Yezi rescued Luo Feiheng, he had already recognized Luo Feiheng as his own foster daughter. Luo Feiheng didn't resist. For her, Master Mo Yezi was naturally closer to her than her so-called father and old ancestor. Mo Yezi pointed at her and said, didn't I say that if you lack any weapons, you can just take them from the arsenal? Why do we need to split so much between us? Luo Feiheng shook her head and said, it's not the same. Relationships are relationships, and rules are rules. Mirror Lake Manor doesn't belong to you alone. I've already brought the materials and handed them over to my brothers. You just need to give the order. Chu Xiu nodded. This was also one of Luo Feiheng's strengths. She could see things clearly. She didn't care about the small things, but she wouldn't overstep the big things. Mo Yezi shook his head and said, you. Alright, I'll tell them to do it. You two haven't seen each other for a long time. It's a good time to catch up. I'll get someone to prepare a banquet. After Mo Yezi left, Luo Feiheng directly leaned on the chair and crossed her legs. She stretched her waist in an extremely unladylike manner and said, I say, Chu Xiu, you're a bit too much. Chu Xiu touched his nose and said, what about me? He hadn't seen Luo Feiheng for a long time, but he didn't seem to provoke her. You still have a part of the 9-branch hall. But after such a long time, you didn't care about it and threw it all to me. You actually made the Guanzhong torture room and Jianghu hall under your command very lively. The treatment of a biological child and an adopted child is really different. Chu Xiu smiled bitterly and said, although I was the one who proposed the establishment of the 9-branch hall, it has always been managed by you. It's no different from your own force. However, this is also my negligence. Take this warrant. If there's a critical situation, you can borrow the power of the Guanzhong torture room and Jianghu hall. You can even borrow the power of the Immortal clan. Of course, if you want to borrow the power of the Immortal clan, you have to find the right person first. Only Senior Wei Shuya's clan will help me. As for the others, I can't guarantee. As he spoke, Chu Xiu threw a warrant with his mark to Luo Feiheng. Actually, it wasn't that he didn't care about Luo Feiheng, but he believed in Luo Feiheng's ability. In the original plot, Luo Feiheng's starting point was much lower than now, but she was still able to make the Bu Air Palace very lively. Now that Luo Feiheng was in charge of the 9-branch hall, he believed that she would do better. If Chu Xiu interfered at will, it would be easy to ruin things. Luo Feiheng accepted it without hesitation and didn't stand on ceremony. Chu Xiu also had a part of the 9-branch hall. She didn't need to be polite with Chu Xiu. "Oh right, let me ask you something. Do you know what's going on between Lu Fengxian and Yan Fian? How did the two of them get together?" Chu Xiu suddenly asked. Previously, Lu Fengxian had been volunteering to help Luo Feiheng deal with some small troubles in the 9-branch hall. Chu Xiu guessed that Luo Feiheng should know something about the situation. Luo Feiheng said in astonishment, "Didn't you see it with Brother Lu last time? You didn't ask? Yan Fian was also there last time. It wasn't convenient." Luo Feiheng nodded and picked up a fruit. As he nibbled on it, he said, "Actually, it's nothing much. You also know that Lu Fengxian and Yan Fian have known each other for a long time. Oh right, you guys seem to know each other together. In the end, Brother Lu got the beauty back, but you're still alone." Chu Xiu frowned and knocked on the table, saying, "Let's talk about the main topic." Luo Feiheng snorted lightly and said, "There's no main topic. It's just that a disciple of the Yu Palace ran into some trouble. Brother Lu went up to save the beauty and helped Yan Fian deal with some matters. The two of them stayed together for a period of time. In the end, they fell in love with each other and were lovey-dovey. It's very natural. Speaking of which, that's one of the 4 great beauties of the martial arts world, Yan Fian. Cloud Sword Fairy, let alone Brother Lu, if I were a man and had a beauty in my arms, I would be moved." Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "But don't you feel that there's something wrong with this? You don't understand Yan Fian. In her heart, the interests of the sect are absolutely above everything else. Even Ing Bailu's infatuated pursuit in the past, she kept rejecting him. Why would she be together with Brother Lu now?" Luo Feiheng suddenly raised his brows and revealed a mischievous expression, saying, "I say, you can't be jealous of Brother Lu, right? What's wrong with Brother Lu? He's not any worse than Ing Bailu. Why can't he get a beauty? I heard that you have a devil sect saintess by your side. She's even Guan Siyu's former wife. TSK, my boss's woman. Just thinking about it makes me excited. If I were a man, I wouldn't be able to last until now." Chu Xiu glared at her. When Luo Feiheng got serious, even men couldn't handle it sometimes. At this moment, a commotion suddenly came from outside the Mirror Lake Manor. Hearing one of the voices, Luo Feiheng's expression immediately turned gloomy. Chu Xiu stood up and said, "What's wrong? Is it someone you know? F***ck. It's that fly again." Luo Feiheng's expression turned ugly and he spat out a rare vulgar word. Chu Xiu raised his brows and said, "You're in trouble." Luo Feiheng nodded with an ugly expression and said, "A disgusting fly always pestering me. This time, I came here not only to forge weapons for the 9-branch hall, but also to hide from him." "What's going on?" Luo Feiheng explained everything to Chu Xiu with an ugly expression. Actually, it was very simple. Someone had taken a fancy to her, Luo Feiheng. That person was Sun Zhongming, a disciple of the 9 great clans Sun clan. He was a young talent that had risen recently. In just a short year, he had already entered the 13th rank of the Longhu leaderboard. The martial artists of Chu Xiu's generation had already begun to leave the Longhu leaderboard. At least, the top 5 of the Longhu leaderboard could step into the martial Dao Grandmaster realm at any time. Therefore, some of the new talents had also begun to enter the leaderboard. Sun Zhongming was one of the more outstanding ones. The Sun clan of Jiangdong was considered to be above average among the 9 great clans. Although it was not as powerful as the Ying clan of Shangshui, it was much stronger than the Mo clan of Shangyang and the Dong clan of Jialing. The clan also had a true fire spirit refinement realm ancestor. However, Compared to the other aristocratic families, the Sun clan of River East was relatively low-key. They only guarded their own territory and rarely sent their clansmen out to explore the world. Unless there was a truly powerful disciple in the clan, such as Sun Zhongming, they would not do so. The Sun clan of Jiangdong's behavior was ridiculed as a dog that guarded its home. However, it was undeniable that the Sun clan of Jiangdong's conservative behavior was extremely stable, to the point that it could even be compared to the Ying clan of Xiangshui. For so many years, the Sun clan of Jiangdong had not declined too much. Even when they were at their weakest and had lost a true fire spirit refinement realm expert, they could still find a few martial Dao grandmasters in the clan. Although allowing their clansmen to wander and fight in the Jianghu could quickly produce amazing disciples, the probability of these disciples dying was not lower than the probability of them eventually becoming martial Dao grandmasters. There was no right or wrong in this matter. It only depended on which was more suitable. Chapter 737. In all fairness, the status of this generation of Jiangdong Sun clan was not low. The 13th place on the Longhu leaderboard was already very high. However, it was a pity that he was pursuing Luo Feiheng. This was because Luo Feiheng would not be interested in anyone. Moreover, as Luo Feiheng narrated, Chu Xiu also understood why Luo Feiheng was so angry that he could not help but curse. This was because Sun Zhongming's methods were too despicable. Both of them were pursuing women, but Ying Bailu was called a Casanova, while Sun Zhongming was called a fool. Ying Bailu's pursuit of Yan Fian was unsuccessful. He was rejected many times, but his infatuation did not change. He tried his best to help her, but he did not make others hate him. After Sun Zhongming was rejected by Luo Feiheng, he went too far. Not only did he pester Luo Feiheng endlessly, but he also used the Jiangdong Sun clan's power to suppress the 9-branch hall and force Luo Feiheng to marry him. Such behavior could not be described as despicable. It could even be called despicable. Luo Feiheng gritted his teeth and said, "If he makes me angry one day, I will stab him to death with my spear." Of course, Luo Feiheng was just saying that. Although Luo Feiheng had done crazy things before, she was not like Chu Xiu, who did not care about anything when he was crazy. The Jiangdong Sun clan's strength and status were obvious. If she really stabbed Sun Zhongming to death with her spear, the 9-branch hall would collapse in an instant. Chu Xiu heard this and shook his head. TSK, femme fatale. Although Luo Feiheng's appearance was indeed extremely beautiful, and it was the kind of beauty that gave off a heroic air, her usual behavior was not like that of a woman. Look at the publicly recognized beauties of the younger generation in the pugilistic world, such as Yan Fian and the Holy Maiden of the moon-worshipping cult. There were many who admired them, and there were also those who actually pursued them, but there were only those who did not pester them endlessly. Unfortunately, this kind of thing always happened to Luo Feiheng. First there was Xiahou Wujiang, and then there was this Sun Zhongming. Of course, this did not mean that her charm was greater than Yan Fian's or the moon-worshipping sect saintesses. It was just that those two could not be provoked. Whoever dared to pester Yan Fian or the moon-worshipping cult saintess would probably end up in a miserable state. Luo Feiheng glared at Chu Xiu. "Who the hell are you talking about?" To other women, femme fatale might be a compliment, but to Luo Feiheng, it was nothing good. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Didn't you always say that I don't care about your 9 branches? It just so happens that I can help you solve this problem." Luo Feiheng immediately said, "Hey, I say, don't get carried away. You can kill that Fang Jinwu from the northern Yan, but the Sun clan from Jiangdong is different from Fang Jinwu. Don't be impulsive." Luo Feiheng understood Chu Xiu's personality very well. When this guy went crazy, he really did not care about his family, and was capable of doing all kinds of crazy things. Usually, Chu Xiu appeared to be the calmest, but when he went crazy, he was also the most terrifying. "Don't worry, I'm confident. Do I look like the kind of person who would solve problems by killing people? With that, Chu Xiu walked out directly, and Luo Feiheng immediately followed behind him. In Luo Feiheng's heart, Chu Xiu was certainly not this kind of person. He was this kind of person from the start. At the entrance of the Mirror Lake Manor, two Mo clan's martial artists were blocking several people, not letting them enter. In front was a young man in his 20s, wearing a cloud-embroidered robe. He was handsome, and always had a smile on his face, looking very kind and sunny. It was very different from the previous description by Luo Feiheng of a wretched idiot who would resort to underhanded means to woo someone. At this moment, the two Mirror Lake Manor's martial artists were trying to persuade him, "Young master, there is an important guest coming today, so the old ancestor really cannot see anyone else." Sun Zhongming still had a smile on his face and said, "I don't want to see your old ancestor, I just want to see Feiheng, I know she is here." Miss Feiheng also does not see guests. Sun Zhongming smiled and said, "You can't see this person, you can't see that person, your Mirror Lake Manor is really arrogant. I want to ask, do you know who I am? Listen to me, don't make me angry, otherwise, even if I kill you here, I will only say sorry to Senior Mo, do you believe me?" The two Mo clan's disciples looked at the smiling Sun Zhongming and felt a chill down their spine. Although he had a smile on his face, as if he was joking, they knew that he would really do such a thing. At this moment, Mo Yezi walked out and said lightly, "Young Master Sun, you are a disciple of the River East Sun clan, but you came here to scare the two guards of my Mirror Lake Manor. What's the point?" Sun Zhongming smiled and cupped his hands, saying, "Greetings Senior Mo, I was just playing with them, please don't take it to heart. I only want to see Feiheng, I hope Senior Mo will not stop me." Mo Yezi coldly said, "It's not that I want to stop you, but the premise of a man and a woman's love is that both parties must be willing. Feiheng is my adopted daughter, and she admits that she is not worthy of the River East Sun clan, so young Master Sun, please leave." Sun Zhongming indifferently waved his hand and said, "If she is not worthy, then so be it. I don't care." Seeing that Mo Yezi still wanted to say something, Sun Zhongming's face carried a trace of a sinister smile and said, "Senior Mo, you have to be reasonable. Luo Feiheng is only your adopted daughter, not your biological daughter. Don't you think you are a little too controlling? Even if Luo Feiheng hid in the Mirror Lake Manor, it would be useless. I did not force my way in, I was only giving face to Feiheng and Senior Mo. Senior Mo, don't forget one thing, this is the Mirror Lake Manor, not the Hall of Gods." Hearing this, Mo Yezi's face turned red with anger. This Sun Zhongming dared to threaten him here. Sun Zhongming's meaning was clear. Eastern Qi's Hall of Gods was one of the 7 sects and 8 schools, and it forged weapons for most of the forces in the Jianghu. It had a wide network of connections, and the River East Sun clan could not afford to offend them. Or rather, the River East Sun clan could afford to offend them, but they would not provoke the Hall of Gods for a junior disciple like him. But now, Mo Yezi was no longer the master of the Hall of Gods. Since he had retired, most of his old connections were naturally severed. Moreover, although Mo Yezi was a martial arts grandmaster, everyone in the Jianghu knew that Mo Yezi could not be defeated. He was no match for a stronger oneness of heaven and man. Although Mo Yezi was angry, there was nothing he could do. The world was fickle, and his title as a crafting grandmaster was not enough. When it was time to use someone, even a famous martial arts grandmaster or a sect leader would have to be polite to him. When it was not time to use someone, a junior martial artist like Sun Zhongming could look down on him. This is not the Hall of Gods, but it is also not the River East of the Sun clan. "Young man, don't be too arrogant." A voice suddenly came. Sun Zhongming looked at Chu Xiu who appeared behind Mo Yezi. At this time, Chu Xiu did not display his aura, and he was not the Eastern Qi elite that he was familiar with. Sun Zhongming was about to explode. However, when he saw Luo Feiheng behind Chu Xiu, a smile immediately appeared on his face. "Feiheng, why do you have to avoid me? Do you know how long I have been looking for you? The Wu County is close to the river east. When you were young, I fell in love with you at first sight. If you marry into the Sun clan of the river east, I promise you that you will not be wronged. Sun Zhongming's expression was very affectionate, but when combined with his tone, it was a little disgusting. Chu Xiu and Luo Feiheng frowned at the same time, showing a disgusted expression. Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Fell in love at first sight when you were young? How precocious and beastly." Sun Zhongming looked at Chu Xiu with a smile on his face, but his tone was cold. "I am talking with Feiheng here, how can any Tom, Dick, or Harry interrupt?" Tom, Dick, or Harry? The corners of Chu Xiu's mouth suddenly curled into a smile. He abruptly raised his head to look at Sun Zhongming. With just a single glance, the expressions of the few guards beside Sun Zhongming at the unity of heaven and man realm changed abruptly as they blocked Sun Zhongming. With just a glance, these experienced martial artists at the unity of heaven and human realm felt a chill all over their bodies. Who was this young man? How could he be so terrifying? One of the guards pulled Sun Zhongming and whispered, "Young master, be careful, this is an expert." Another guard cupped his hands and said cautiously, "May I ask for this young master's name?" "I am Chu Xiu." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said lightly, "Chu Xiu? That Chu Xiu?" The guards of the Sun clan felt a chill in their hearts. How many people in the martial world called Chu Xiu were there? He was so young, but with just a glance, he was already so terrifying. Apart from Chu Xiu, who had just killed a true fire spirit refinement realm expert, was there anyone else? The smile on Sun Zhongming's face, which seemed to be in his control at all times, gradually disappeared, and his eyes flickered with shock. The shadow of a tree, the name of a person. The current Chu Xiu was powerful enough to deter them from acting presumptuously with just his name. After being stunned for a while, Sun Zhongming laughed and said, "So it's Brother Chu. I really have a bad mouth. I hope Brother Chu doesn't take offense." Chu Xiu looked at Sun Zhongming and said indifferently, "What did you call me? Brother Chu? Are you worthy? On the Longhu leaderboard, Sword King City's Fang Chi Shao can call me Brother Chu, and Shangshui in Clan's Ing Bailu can also call me Brother Chu. But what right do you have? Do you think you're worthy of calling me brother?" In the face of Chu Xiu's humiliating words, the guards looked nervous, afraid that Sun Zhongming couldn't help but fall out with Chu Xiu. Fortunately, Sun Zhongming was more shrewd than they had imagined. In the face of Chu Xiu's humiliation, he just took a deep breath, squeezed out a smile, and said, "Official Chu, please forgive me. I was rash. But Official Chu, everything must be reasonable. My pursuit of Feiheng is a matter of love. Are you going to stop me? Of course, if Official Chu says that Luo Feiheng is your woman, I will immediately retreat. I dare not fight with Official Chu." Chapter 738. Sun Zhongming had heard that Luo Feiheng and Chu Xiu were good friends, but he also understood Luo Feiheng's character very well. He believed that Luo Feiheng had nothing to do with Chu Xiu. Of course, if Chu Xiu said that he did, then he could only retreat and think of other methods for the time being. However, at this time, Chu Xiu's face revealed a trace of a sinister smile as he said, "Reason? You should know that I, Chu Xiu, have never been reasonable." Sun Zhongming's expression slightly changed as he said, "Official Chu, what do you mean by this?" Chu Xiu spread out his hands and said, "What I mean is, in the future, I'll have to trouble you to get lost." Sun Zhongming's face revealed a trace of anger, but before he could say anything, Chu Xiu coldly said, "There is something that I'm afraid you don't know. I was the one who first proposed the establishment of the 9-branch hall, so it's best that you put away your laughable schemes. I'm not interested in the *T internal affairs of your Sun clan, and I'm also not interested in getting involved. However, if you really provoke me, I won't kill you, but I can make it so that you can never be the successor of the Sun clan in this life. Chu Xiu's words were very confusing, and Luo Feiheng felt a bit dizzy listening to it. However, Mo Yezi could also be considered an experienced person, and he understood what Chu Xiu meant. In fact, when Chu Xiu previously heard Luo Feiheng's description, he also thought that Sun Zhongming was a wretched scoundrel who was obsessed with lust. However, no matter how much Luo Feiheng resembled a man, she was still a woman. When she described it, there would always be some personal feelings mixed in, but she neglected some things. A person who was able to make a name for himself in the Jianghu within a short year and was ranked 13th on the Longhu leaderboard, even if he was a scoundrel with ability. In the end, when Chu Xiu saw Sun Zhongming, he deliberately humiliated him, but Sun Zhongming forcefully endured it. Moreover, based on his actions and tone, although he was arrogant, he wasn't a brainless person. In that case, why was he still pestering Luo Feiheng? Excluding the fact that he really wanted Luo Feiheng, there was only one possibility left, and that was the thing behind Luo Feiheng. Now that Luo Feiheng had betrayed the Luo family, there was only one thing left for her, the 9-division hall. Previously, Luo Feiheng had already said that Sun Zhongming was only a direct descendant of the Sun clan and not the successor. A title was very particular. For example, Ying Bailu or Fang Qi Shao, who had been appointed as the successor of a faction, could already represent a portion of the faction's authority with their words and actions. Now, Sun Zhongming was still not the successor. Although he was the most famous among the disciples of River East Sun clan, at least in the hearts of the elders of the Sun clan, he wasn't the only one. At the very least, he wasn't too far ahead of the others. If he married Luo Feiheng, not only would he obtain a powerful wife, but he would also be able to take over the 9-branch hall, which was developing rapidly and was not weak. This was very beneficial for him in his fight for the position of successor. This time, Chu Xiu didn't plan to kill anyone. However, if Sun Zhongming didn't know what was good for him, it wasn't like he hadn't done things that harmed others without benefiting himself. By weakening his strength, the strength of the other disciples of the Sun clan would naturally become stronger. The strength that he had painstakingly built up would definitely collapse. Sun Zhongming looked at Chu Xiu with anger, resentment, and deep fear in his eyes. Chu Xiu's conjecture wasn't completely correct, but it was at least 80% correct. A large part of the reason why he pursued Luo Feiheng was indeed because he was interested in the 9-division hall. He wanted to take over the 9-division hall and make it his own strength. However, another part of the reason was indeed because of Luo Feiheng. Chu Xiu was a utilitarian person and always liked to think in terms of benefits. In fact, when Sun Zhongming said that he had fallen in love with Luo Feiheng at first sight since he was young, he wasn't lying. The Wu commandery was close to River East. In the past, Luo Feiheng's father had brought her young to the Sun clan as a guest. That was the first time Sun Zhongming had met Luo Feiheng. However, Sun Zhongming had always been in seclusion in the clan. Now that his strength had reached a certain level, he was allowed to roam the Jianghu. Previously, when Xiahou Wujiang was pursuing Luo Feiheng, he even wanted the clan to intervene in this matter and warn the Xiahou clan. However, his request was rejected. At that time, Sun Zhongming's strength was slightly mediocre. He hadn't stood out among the many disciples, so the weight of his words was extremely limited. But now, he finally had a chance to roam the Jianghu and finally had a reputation. When he saw that Luo Feiheng was no longer a disciple of the Luo clan and had the backing of the 9-division hall, he had some other thoughts. Ying Bailu pursued Yan Fian because he wanted her heart. However, Sun Zhongming only wanted Luo Feiheng's person and the 9-division hall behind her. Therefore, he could use even more underhanded methods. He didn't expect to meet Chu Xiu this time. Looking at Sun Zhongming's embarrassed and angry expression, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "What? Was I not clear enough? Or do you really want me to ruin all your plans, or do you want me to kill you?" Chu Xiu's words were calm, but to Sun Zhongming's ears, there was a chill that seeped into his heart. He had no doubt that Chu Xiu would do such a thing. Since Chu Xiu dared to kill a powerhouse in true fire, what else would he not dare to do? At least after killing Fang Jinwu, the entire Jianghu saw one thing: Chu Xiu's boldness. At that moment, a figure suddenly appeared in front of Sun Zhongming and stopped Chu Xiu's terrifying aura. He smiled and said, "My disciple is insensible. Official Chu, please don't take offense. Please don't lower yourself to the level of a junior." The person who appeared in front of Chu Xiu was a middle-aged man who also had the strength of a martial Dao master. Seeing him appear, Sun Zhongming immediately breathed a sigh of relief and hurriedly said, "Fourth uncle." The Sun family of River East was huge, and the factions in the family were also complicated. This fourth uncle, Sun Qili, was on his father's side. He had once helped his father fight for the position of the family leader, so he was truly one of them. Sun Zhongming came out to roam the Jianghu. He was one of the few people in the Sun family who could make a name for himself at a young age in the past decade. The other members of the Sun family did not care about it, but his father could not ignore it. Therefore, he specially sent Sun Qili, who was running the family business outside, to look after it. This time, when Sun Zhongming came to the Mirror Lake Villa, Sun Qili immediately came as soon as he knew. He was not afraid of anything else, but he was afraid that Sun Zhongming would really become enemies with the Mirror Lake Villa on impulse. Although the Sun family could afford to offend Mo Yezi, he was after all a crafting grandmaster. Who knew when they would need him, so it was better to be cautious. He also did not expect that he did not become enemies with Mo Yezi, but instead attracted the attention of Chu Xiu, who was even more difficult to deal with. Chu Xiu stared at Sun Qili, and in an instant, a strong pressure came straight at Sun Qili. In an instant, Sun Qili felt as if the Chu Xiu in front of him had turned into the incarnation of a devil. An endless rain of blood fell, and the cries of ghosts and gods descended. The horrifying aura made Sun Qili feel an illusion of suffocation. "Junior? Don't you have to take responsibility for the junior's wrong words? You want me to not lower myself to the junior's level? Fine, I will meet you, how about that?" Sun Qili's expression changed several times. The shadow of a tree, the name of a person. The Jianghu was full of rumors that Chu Xiu was able to kill Fang Jinwu, so his strength was terrifying. However, those who were too far away did not pay much attention to it. It was not until Chu Xiu stood in front of him that Sun Qili realized that this Chu Xiu was even more terrifying than the rumors said. Pointing at the outside of the Mirror Lake Manor, Chu Xiu spat out a single word: "Scram." Sun Qili's face was ashen. He did not say a word, but directly turned around and left with Sun Zhongming. Mo Yezi shook his head helplessly. Although he had long seen through the Jianghu, he could not help but sigh when he saw this scene. It was really good to have strength. He was a grandmaster who could only craft weapons and not fight enemies. Even a junior like Sun Zhongming dared to speak in front of him. If it was Chu Xiu, a single word from his mouth would make Sun Qili scram, not even daring to let out a fart. What was the difference? This was the difference. On the other hand, Luo Feiheng had a strange expression on her face. It was as if she had only met Chu Xiu for the first time. Luo Feiheng had known Chu Xiu for a long time. Back at the God Weapon Conference, they were already familiar with each other before they had even reached the Three-Flower Realm. Because of this, although she knew about Chu Xiu's reputation and strength, she could not see it clearly. It was only at this moment that she understood the status of Chu Xiu in the Jianghu. He was someone who could make the Sun clan of the 9 great clans concede. Chu Xiu turned his head and smiled at Luo Feiheng. The trouble has been solved. Luo Feiheng was stunned for a moment. However, she then snorted softly and said, "What if that fly comes looking for trouble after you leave?" Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, then he doesn't take me seriously. When that time comes, I will personally go to the Sun clan of Jiangdong and discuss with them about disciplining their young disciples. At this moment, more than 10 miles away from Mirror Lake Villa, Sun Qili's expression was livid. Although the Sun clan of Jiangdong did not leave Jiangdong, they still had to do business. Sun Qili was smooth and slick in dealing with people. He was also strong, which was why he often wandered outside and had a certain reputation in the Jianghu. But because of the reputation of the Sun clan of Jiangdong, for so many years, no one had ever dared to tell him to scram in front of him. Sun Zhongming also suppressed his anger and said, "This Chu Xiu is so arrogant. Fourth uncle, when has the Sun clan ever suffered such a great humiliation?" Sun Qili snorted coldly and said, "Put away your petty thoughts. Don't involve the Sun clan in everything. It's only you and I who have been humiliated. If you want to drag the entire Sun clan into this, will your second uncle and the others agree? In the future, don't even think about that Luo Feiheng. Women are everywhere. She won't make a difference. The same goes for the 9-branch hall. If you want to have power, you have to do it yourself. With your current status, there's no need for you to take the risk and become enemies with Chu Xiu. This guy is a lunatic. If we really anger him, we will be the ones to suffer." Chapter 739. Sun Zhongming was indeed very reluctant to part with Luo Feiheng, and Sun Qili was also angry at Chu Xiu's attitude. But both of them were utilitarian people. In front of interests, they could temporarily throw away their dignity and other things. They would remember this hatred, and it would not be too late to take revenge in the future. But now, they did not have the guts to provoke Chu Xiu. At this time, Chu Xiu had just killed Fang Jinwu, who was in the true fire spirit refinement realm, and his reputation was like the sun in the sky. Moreover, his foundation was in northern Yan and Guangzhong torture room. The Sun family's power could not reach there, so they could only endure it for the time being. At this time, in Mirror Lake Villa, after helping Luo Feiheng solve this problem, Chu Xiu was ready to leave first. He did not know when the heavenly demon dance would be completely promoted to a divine weapon, so Chu Xiu would certainly not wait here all the time. Therefore, Chu Xiu left directly and was ready to return to northern Yan. But before he could go far, he ran into Mr. Lu and Mei Qinglian, who were in a hurry. Seeing Chu Xiu, Mr. Lu immediately breathed a sigh of relief and said, "I finally found him. If I didn't find him again, I would really go crazy." Chu Xiu frowned and said, "Did something happen in Guangzhong torture room or Jianghu hall?" If it was Mr. Lu who came to find him, it might be because of the Mo clan, but now even Mei Qinglian had come. Could it be that during the time he was out, his old nest had been moved? Mr. Lu shook his head and said, "Don't worry, it's not about you. The Mo clan wants to gather everyone for a meeting. I came to inform you that you and the Holy Maiden will come. But we didn't expect that you would not be in Yanjing City, so we came to Eastern Qi to look for you. We just happened to meet." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "What happened?" Mr. Lu chuckled and said, "I'm afraid that the moon-worshipping sect can't hold on any longer. Therefore, the head of the 9 divine magispriests of the moon-worshipping sect, the East Emperor, has come to our hidden devil clan to discuss the alliance. The bright demon bloodline and the hidden demon bloodline had been hostile to each other for many years. Now the two bloodlines were going to join hands. This was definitely a big event that would shake the whole Jianghu." However, Chu Xiu had a calm expression on his face. He had already expected this. The moon-worshipping cult was indeed very strong. It was so strong that many people in the pugilistic world thought it was the second Kunlun devil cult. Unfortunately, the moon-worshipping cult was not the Kunlun devil cult. When the Kunlun devil cult was still around, they were truly invincible. The Iron Emperor Castle wanted to resist the Kunlun devil cult, but it was destroyed by Dugu Weiwei's arrow. When those devil envoys conferred by the Kunlun devil cult came to those righteous sects to handle some matters, 99% of those righteous sects would bow down and greet them as Lord. What heroes! All of them were women. The moon-worshipping cult did not have such momentum now. If the people of the moon-worshipping cult went out to show off, they would still be spat on and called evil. Right now, the moon-worshipping church was fighting against 80% of the forces in the entire Jianghu. It was already not easy for the moon-worshipping church to resist for so long. Only now did they start to think of ways to ask for help. This was already somewhat beyond Chu Xiu's expectations. What does the Hidden Devil clan mean? Do you agree or not? Mr. Lu shook his head and said, you know the situation of the Hidden Devil clan. Without a steward, who would dare to agree? That's why the meeting this time gathered all the people who are qualified to inherit the Hidden Devil clan, and finally made a decision. Time was tight, and Mr. Lu did not have time to talk too much with Chu Xiu. The few of them set off first, talking as they walked. The attitude of the Hidden Devil clan did not need to be expressed first. Everyone had to unify their opinions first. Therefore, Chu Xiu did not care about the others. He directly asked, what does Senior Wei mean? Mr. Lu said in a deep voice, Senior Wei's meaning is very simple. One word, sincerity. The Hidden Devil clan will put in as much effort as the moon-worshipping cult is sincere. Let's not talk about the grudges of the past. The righteous and the demonic cannot coexist. We can't just watch the moon-worshipping cult be destroyed by the righteous sections. Of course, if the moon-worshipping cult just wants to take advantage of us and use us as a shield, then we don't have to care so much. In any case, in the end, our demonic lineage will not be destroyed. Along the way, Mr. Lu directly brought Chu Xiu to a secret stronghold of the Hidden Devil clan in eastern Qi. This place was different from the place where Chu Xiu received Dugu Weiwei's inheritance. That was the real secret place of the Hidden Devil clan. How could they let Eastern Emperor Tai enter it? This secret stronghold was under a barren mountain. A large space was directly cut out, forming a small palace. There were many demonic cultivators coming and going. Most of them covered their faces and were in all kinds of strange shapes. The Hidden Devil clan had many demonic cultivators who could not see the light. Of course, it did not matter to Chu Xiu and the others. Mr. Lu was a member of the Phaseless Demon sect and was backed by a big sect. Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian had already been exposed, and they had withstood the attack of the Righteous Alliance. They could be considered to have the qualifications to walk in the pugilistic world openly. At this time, seeing Chu Xiu coming, the surrounding martial artists of the Hidden Devil clan also cast various gazes at Chu Xiu. Some were envious, some were jealous, some were disdainful and even malicious. Chu Xiu was too famous in the pugilistic world. He was so famous that he did not seem to be a member of the Hidden Devil clan. He was simply dazzling. Although Chu Xiu had risked his life to obtain all of this, a person's heart was just that dark. What right did he have to enjoy the respect and fame of the people in Jianghu, while they could only hide in the endless darkness and act like rats? Therefore, among the entire Hidden Devil clan, there were always a few who had a good impression of Chu Xiu. There were also some who had a bad impression. Of course, there were more who did not care. Chu Xiu was too lazy to think so much about these people's thoughts. Mr. Lu directly brought Chu Xiu to a palace to see Wei Shuya. At this time, in the palace, in addition to Wei Shuya, Chu Wuji was also there. Seeing Chu Xiu coming here, before Wei Shuya could speak, Chu Wuji said with a strange look on his face, Fang Jinwu actually died in your hands. TSK, I didn't expect it. That old thing has always been cunning and slippery, but in the end, he did not have a good end. Chu Xiu asked, Senior Chu knows Fang Jinwu? Chu Wuji sneered and said, we have fought. In the past, Fang Jinwu also came to my Wei kingdom to seek for help. How can I not count him in? However, This old thing's strength is preserved very well. He is definitely not the kind of old man who has no combat power. I didn't take any advantage of him. Hearing Chu Wuji's words, Chu Xiu was also speechless. This is a real ruthless person. In the martial arts real pellet state, there are many people who are more powerful than him, and this Chu Wuji in front of me is one of them. Although Chu Xiu did kill Fang Jinwu, Chu Xiu also had to admit that his trick accounted for 40% of the credit. Facing the enemy head-on, he was still not a powerhouse of the real fire spirit refinement state. However, this Chu Wuji actually challenged Fang Jinwu head-on with the real pellet state. The most important thing was that he actually retreated. Although his record was not as dazzling as Chu Xiu's, the difficulty was no less than Chu Xiu killing Fang Jinwu. After all, at that time, he faced Fang Jinwu in his heyday. Wei Shuya said on the side, Chu Xiu did a good job. Taking advantage of the time when the Great Light Temple's power is not in Northern Yen, you can do whatever you want in the Northern Yen land. It probably won't take long for the battle between the righteous and demonic factions to come to an end. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows and said, "Oh. Has the Immortal clan made a decision?" Wei Shuya shook his head and said, "No, but the decision of the Immortal clan is no longer important. What's important is that the righteous sect's tolerance has reached a limit. It's time to end it." In recent years, there were only two battles that could be called the righteous and demonic factions. One of them was the Fuyu Mountain battle that Chu Xiu once participated in. The battle between the righteous and demonic factions was started by the righteous martial arts world, but it was only a small-scale one. The strongest martial artist who participated in the battle was only the real fire spirit refinement state, and the main force was only the martial artists of the 5 major sword sections. The rest were just supporting characters. It was not an exaggeration to say that the battle between the righteous and demonic factions was started by the moon-worshipping cult, and the scope was even wider. It almost involved half of the martial arts world. Yi Shaonan, the old celestial master, and the divine monk Rama and other powerhouses of the supreme list who had reached the mysterious heaven and earth realm had already taken action. It was conceivable what would happen in the end. Anyway, regardless of the outcome, the matter was already over. Chu Xiu was still chatting when a martial artist knocked on the door and came in. He said in a low voice, "Elder Wei, East Emperor Tai of the moon-worshipping cult has arrived. The other seniors have invited you over." Wei Shuya nodded and waved his hand. He directly led Chu Xiu and the others to the central hall. There was no statue in the central hall of this secret stronghold. It only enshrined a figure shrouded in boundless darkness, and his face could not be seen clearly. It was said that this was the image of Dugu Weiwei in the past. The Immortal clan did not worship gods and Buddhas, but only the demon lord. At this time, under the statue of the demon lord, several figures were shrouded in darkness. The aura they emitted was extremely powerful, and each of them was an expert of the real fire spirit refinement state. Although the Immortal clan could not find a supreme powerhouse who could be ranked among the supreme in the Jianghu, each clan had their own trump card, and their strength was not weak. However, Chu Xiu was a little unfamiliar with the few experts of the real fire spirit refinement state. He had almost never seen any of them. Chu Wuji secretly explained to Chu Xiu. Most of them had similar status as Wei Shuya. They were the old people of the Immortal clan. They did not establish their own clan, and only had some descendants and disciples. Among them, only the sect masters of the Phaseless Demon sect and the Scarlet Demon sect were present. Among them, the Phaseless Demon sect had a large number of people and was relatively famous in the Immortal clan. Although the Scarlet Demon sect had a small number of people, the people from the Scarlet Demon sect were all ruthless people. They were feared by the righteous sects even more than the Phaseless Demon sect. These big shots of the Immortal clan were more or less supported by some people. These people were like Chu Xiu and the others. If they were not their disciples, they were on their side. At this time, the door of the palace was pushed open, and a majestic pressure descended. Dong Huangtai rolled up his sleeves and stepped out of the palace step by step. Immediately, a few people present snorted coldly, and also released a powerful aura to collide with Dong Huangtai. In mid-air, one could clearly hear the sound of the collision of the aura. Chapter 740. The Hidden Devil Clan and the Bright Devil Clan had been fighting for such a long time, and the two sides had never met in peace. Last time, Chu Xiu clearly remembered that mountain ghost, one of the 9 divine magispriests of the moon-worshipping cult, was slapped in the face by Wei Shuya. However, now that the person from the moon-worshipping cult had been replaced by Dong Huangtai, it was not so easy to slap him in the face. Chu Xiu remembered Dong Huangtai's performance in the battle of the righteous and demonic forces in the floating Jade Mountain. It was terrifying. The burning sky mirror had suppressed everyone, and its power was immeasurable. To put it in a gloomy way, in Chu Xiu's eyes, even Wei Shuya was not a match for Dong Huangtai. He did not know if the other big shots of the Hidden Devil Clan could defeat Dong Huangtai. Dong Huangtai, with this attitude, "Are you here to ask for help?" One of the big shots of the Hidden Devil Clan said coldly. Dong Huangtai said lightly, "Ask for help? When has the moon-worshipping cult ever asked for help? I have said before that I am here to join hands with the Hidden Devil Clan. If the skin does not exist, how can the hair attach? The Hidden Devil Clan and the Bright Devil Clan are both devils. Now that the righteous sects have made it clear that they want to destroy the moon-worshipping cult, if something happens to the moon-worshipping cult, can you all still hide in the dark and accumulate your strength?" The leader of the Een Demon Clan said coldly, "That sounds nice. The Hidden Devil Clan and the Bright Devil Clan are both devils, so why did the moon-worshipping cult hide in West Chu and protect itself when the holy cult was destroyed by the righteous sects?" The Een Demon Clan was loyal to the Kunlun Devil cult. Among all the people present, they were the most loyal to the Kunlun Devil cult, so naturally, they hated the moon-worshipping cult the most. Moreover, at that time, the moon-worshipping cult not only protected themselves, they even did things like kicking people when they were down. Many of the Kunlun demon cult disciples that escaped to West Chu were harmed by the moon-worshipping cult. Dong Huangtai said lightly, "Everyone, be honest, with the situation of the Kunlun Devil cult, even if the moon-worshipping cult helped, what could it do? It was nothing more than delaying the collapse of the Great Xia by a few days. The Kunlun Devil cult was propped up by Dugu Weiwei alone. If he's gone, no one can save the Kunlun Devil cult." Dong Huangtai glanced at the phaseless demon sect leader and said solemnly, "Needless to say, you guys look down on that generation's moon-worshipping cult. Even I look down on it. If Cult Master Yi Xiaonan could have been born a few hundred years earlier, if I could have been born a few hundred years earlier, how could my moon-worshipping cult stand idly by? With the Kunlun Devil cult gone, our moon-worshipping cult will naturally be the leader of the Devil Path. We will take advantage of the situation to stir up the Jianghu and ascend to the top of the world." Dong Huangtai's words were extremely arrogant. He even scolded the ancestors of the moon-worshipping cult. In fact, that was exactly what he thought. The war between the righteous and the Devil Path was such a good opportunity. Countless heroes would appear on the stage, while the moon-worshipping cult of that generation was like a spectator, hiding in the land of West Chu. Even if they were the ancestors of Dong Huangtai and the others, Dong Huangtai would spit on them and call them trash. And he indeed had the qualifications to do so. This generation's moon-worshipping cult was probably the strongest in the history of the moon-worshipping cult, even comparable to the ancestors of the cult. Yi Xiaonan was extremely talented. Without Dugu Weiwei, he was fully deserving of the title of the Devil Path's #1. Once the Heaven-Mending Heart Sutra appeared, who could compete with him? And he, Dong Huangtai, was also the strongest Eastern Emperor Tai in the history of the Devil Path. To be more arrogant, Dong Huangtai had already left the ranks of the 9 great magi. In the past, when people mentioned Dong Huangtai, they would add a title in front of it. He was one of the 9 great magi, Dong Huangtai. But now, he didn't need to. He was Dong Huangtai. His reputation had already surpassed the 9 great magi. Even the other 8 of the 9 great magi combined were not qualified to be compared to him. Wei Shuya let out a silent sigh. Moon-worshipping cult was able to reach its current scale and reputation not just because of luck. Looking at the current generation of moon-worshipping cult, Yi Xiaonan and Dong Huangtai, which one of them was not stunning? On the other hand, what about the Hidden Devil clan? Apart from himself and the Yin Demon clan's leader, there were some people who only cared about their own interests. There were many good ones in the next generation, such as Chu Wuji, Mr. Liu, Mei Qinglian, and of course, Chu Xiu. Unfortunately, apart from Chu Wuji, the others were too young. Could the Hidden Devil clan hold on until they all grew up? At this time, the other big shots of the Hidden Devil clan did not speak. It was not that they were speechless, but they did not know what to say. Originally, they all thought that moon-worshipping cult was here to ask for help, so they had already drafted in advance what they should ask from moon-worshipping cult. They were already prepared to ask for a lion's share. However, who would have thought that Dong Huangtai would be so confident? His words were extremely arrogant, as if he was in the right, and did not look like he was asking for help at all. At this time, Wei Shuya, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, Dong Huangtai, you came here to seek an alliance with the Hidden Devil clan. Does Yi Xiaonan not know? Dong Huangtai's entire body was covered in a black robe, and his face was also covered by demonic qi. However, everyone could still feel that Wei Shuya's words had shaken Dong Huangtai's mind. After a while, Dong Huangtai did not deny it. He just asked, how do you know? Wei Shuya said indifferently, because with Yi Xiaonan's character, he would never ask for help. I have seen Yi Xiaonan a long time ago. He is an extremely proud person, extremely proud. There are some things that he would rather bear alone than ask for help, even if it is an exchange of benefits. Wei Shuya also had to admit that Yi Xiaonan had already surpassed everyone in the Hidden Devil clan on this point. An expert must have the mentality of an expert. When you don't have the strength, being so unyielding is called not being flexible. But when you have the strength, this is called confidence, or conceit can also be called conceit. Not everyone has the courage to fight the world alone, but those who have this kind of courage, without exception, are all experts. Of course, there are also madmen. Dong Huangtai was silent for a while, then said, the leader has his own ideas. We can't persuade him, so we can only think of ways to share the leader's burden. The leader really doesn't know about this, but with my position in the moon-worshipping cult, I can also facilitate this matter. Wei Shuya looked at each other and secretly transmitted his voice to discuss with the other elders of the Hidden Devil clan. Dong Huangtai just stood there with his hands behind his back. His posture was incomparably calm, as if this time it was possible to facilitate an alliance. With the cultivation of Wei Shuya and the others, they deliberately concealed their voices and used their inner strength to transmit their voices. Not to mention Chu Xiu, even Dong Huangtai could not hear them. However, Chu Xiu was able to discern one thing from the aura emanating from these people, and that was greed. Among these people, the first thing they thought about was not whether to agree to the alliance, but how many benefits they could get from this alliance, and how many things they could extort from the moon-worshipping cult. Some people were even thinking about whether the moon-worshipping cult really had these things, and whether they should fight with others for them. Hearing this mess of words, Wei Shuya's face was already extremely gloomy. He shouted in a low voice, all of you, shut up. Everyone, outsiders are watching. Are you really going to embarrass yourselves in front of the moon-worshipping cult? Wei Shuya's seniority was right there. Perhaps his strength was not the strongest in the entire Hidden Devil clan, but his seniority was the highest. At this time, when he spoke, everyone also quieted down. Glancing at the crowd, Wei Shuya said in a low voice, "Everyone, don't forget who is standing in front of you. It is the moon-worshipping cult. The conditions you have proposed are so harsh. Even if Dong Huang Tai agrees, when we return to the moon-worshipping cult, do you think Yi Xiaonan will agree? I don't need to say anything about the current situation, you have all seen it. The situation is already very critical, and the Hidden Devil clan can't just stay out of it, so my opinion is to agree. But since we've agreed, then we'll have another war between the righteous and demonic paths. Don't let my demonic path lose too miserably. The conditions you've put forward are simply forcing moon-worshipping cult to turn against us. Think about it carefully. If the moon-worshipping cult came to the moon-worshipping cult to extort like this 500 years ago, how would you react? These people present were all big shots of the Hidden Devil clan, and they were all experts who had reached the true fire spirit refining realm. Even though their qualifications were not as good as Wei Shuya's, they were not young and had a lot of experience. Hearing Wei Shuya's words, they temporarily put aside the greed in their hearts and put away the exorbitant conditions. In fact, if it was just one person asking for an exorbitant price, the moon-worshipping cult would most likely agree. But now, with so many people demanding an exorbitant price, they were simply toying with the moon-worshipping cult. At that time, Dong Huang Tai and Yi Xiaonan would probably be the first to fly into a rage. However, someone still said, "Elder Wei, what you said makes sense. But the problem is, since my Yinma bloodline has produced someone, how can we not raise any conditions? Otherwise, it would be too much of a loss." Wei Shuya said calmly, "I will make the conditions, but it will be for the entire Hidden Devil clan, not for any one of you." No one made a sound. The mentality of not worrying about scarcity but worrying about inequality has always existed. If I can't get it, no one else can either. Wei Shuya's conditions were acceptable to them. Looking at Dong Huang Tai, Wei Shuya said in a low voice, "If you want the Yinma clan to take action, we can. The first is to hand over the Heavenly Demon Creation flag to the Yinma clan. The second is that the Yinma clan can take action, but we will not help you fight against the righteous sects and be your shield. We will only be responsible for intercepting the forces that are attached to the big sects, so that your moon-worshipping cult will not be besieged. As for the third, I want you to hand over the traitors of the Earth Demon Hall who betrayed the moon-worshipping cult. As long as your moon-worshipping cult can agree to these three conditions, we can swear today that we will help your moon-worshipping cult at the critical moment." Chapter 741. The three conditions put forward by Wei Shuya were well thought out. They were for the sake of the entire Yinma clan, and not just one person would benefit from it. The first condition was that the good fortune Heavenly Devil flag, which represented the orthodox Devil Dao, had been snatched away by the moon-worshipping cult during the righteous devil battle on Mount Fuyu. The symbolic meaning of this thing was greater than its actual function. However, it was the orthodox representative of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. Now that it had returned to the Yinma clan, it could be considered as returning to its original owner. The second condition was that the Yinma clan did not want to damage their own strength because of the moon-worshipping cult. It was fine to help share some of the power on the periphery, but in the key areas, it still needed to rely on the moon-worshipping cult itself. As for the third condition, it involved some of the old grievances of the Kunlun devil cult. In the past, when the countless forces under the Kunlun devil cult faced the righteous Dao alliance, these people would either choose to fight to the death, or hide underground like the Yinma clan and cause some trouble for the righteous Dao sects from time to time. However, there were always some people who did not have strong willpower and chose to block the deserters. As for the actions of these people, the Yinma clan did not pursue anything. Everyone had their own ambitions, and not everyone wanted to die. However, there were some people whose actions could not be forgiven by the Yinma clan, such as the Earth Demon Hall that Wei Shuya mentioned. The Earth Demon Hall was also a large hall under the command of the Kunlun devil cult in the past. When the righteous Dao sects attacked, its hall master not only did not choose to fight head-on, but also secretly attacked his fellow sect members, snatching a large number of treasures and resources and escaping. This kind of betrayal was even more abominable than the enemy. All these years, the Immortal clan wanted to take revenge, but they were stopped by the moon-worshipping cult. The reason was very simple. After the people of the Earth Demon Hall escaped, they chose to give most of their treasures to the moon-worshipping cult in exchange for their protection. At that time, during the Righteous Dao War, only the moon-worshipping cult could stand against the exhausted Righteous Dao sects and the remnants of the Kunlun devil cult. Dong Huang Tai pondered for a while, and after a long while, he spat out a word, yes. The conditions of the Immortal clan were just within his acceptable range. Although the good fortune heavenly demon flag was precious, with the power of their moon-worshipping cult, even without the good fortune heavenly demon flag, they were still the #1 sect of the devil Dao. If the hidden devil lineage wanted it, they could just give it to them. As for the Immortal clan not going all out, Dong Huang Tai had already expected this. On the contrary, if the Immortal clan said that they would go all out to help moon-worshipping cult, Dong Huang Tai would be suspicious. The last point was actually what Dong Huang Tai did not care about. It was the ancestors of the moon-worshipping cult who promised to protect those traitors, not them. Over the years, those guys were still sensible, so the moon-worshipping cult had never cared about them. But now that the moon-worshipping cult was facing a crisis, what was a promise made hundreds of years ago? Wei Shuya pointed at the statue of the demon lord behind him and said in a deep voice, "The statue of Lord Dugu is above. Today, I, the Immortal clan, swear that when the moon-worshipping cult is in danger, we will help once. If we violate this oath, we will be devoured by the inner demons and fall to Avicii forever." Most of the people in the demon path were not trustworthy. But at the level of Dong Huang Tai and Wei Shuya, they already disdained to lie. Therefore, this oath was actually just to give the other party a reassurance. The Immortal clan didn't worship gods or Buddha, they only respected the demon lord. If they violated this, they would not really be devoured by the inner demons, but they would at least be ridiculed by the bright demons for the rest of their lives. Dong Huang Tai said in a deep voice, "Someone will send the heavenly demon creation flag later. But although the moon-worshipping cult will not protect those guys from the Earth Demon Hall, you will have to deal with them yourselves. The moon-worshipping cult has no time to help you deal with the traitors. And even without the protection of the moon-worshipping cult, those guys have already taken root in the land of West Chu and relied on the West Chu royal family. That's all the information, you can deal with it yourselves." After saying that, Dong Huang Tai left directly. He was very straightforward. The moon-worshipping cult had really reached a very critical moment. Dong Huang Tai did not even want to delay for a quarter of an hour. After a moment of silence, someone said, "Who will deal with those traitors this time?" Dealing with the traitors of the Earth Demon Hall was not only to take revenge for the Kunlun devil cult, but there were also some benefits to it. In the past, the Earth Demon Hall had secretly attacked their fellow disciples, so they held many of the treasures of the Kunlun devil cult in their hands. These treasures had been given to the moon-worshipping cult by the Earth Demon Hall. A part of it was used as a proof of allegiance in exchange for the moon-worshipping cult's protection, but a part had fallen into their hands. Now that they were going to deal with the people from the Earth Demon Hall, they naturally had to take back the treasures of the Kunlun devil cult. How to distribute these things was a problem. The current state of the Immortal clan was very bad. There was no one who could take charge of the overall situation, but they still wanted to fish for benefits. Wei Shuya relied on his experience and reputation to voice out more opinions and suppress the crowd. But the problem was that on other issues, everyone would give Wei Shuya face, but when it came to benefits, his reputation as a senior was not useful. Looking around, Wei Shuya secretly shook his head and said, "We don't need to deal with those bastards from the Earth Demon Hall together. Send out some of the younger generation and let them discuss it among themselves. We old men have been in charge of the Immortal clan for so long, it's time to give these younger generation a chance to stand out. When we kick the bucket in the future, they will still be the ones sitting here discussing important matters. It's good to get to know each other first. The few big shots of the Immortal clan all nodded. This method could be considered fair. At least no one would suffer a loss. After agreeing to send their people over the next day, the crowd dispersed. Returning to his own palace, Wuxia sighed and said, "You all saw that the Immortal clan is in such a situation now. They all have their own thoughts. My generation can still hold on, but I don't know what to do for the next generation." Chu Wuji lazily slumped on the chair and said, "Old Wei, you worry too much. In this world, there are righteous and there are demons. The Immortal clan is not living up to expectations, so you can't extend the life of the entire Immortal clan. The legacy of the Kunlun devil cult won't be lost. It's just a change of name." Chu Wuji was very open-minded. Of course, this was also because he wasn't a member of the Immortal clan. He had joined the demon path halfway. He used to be a genuine member of the royal family, a righteous hero. So the only person Chu Wuji was grateful to was Wuxia. As for the other Immortal clan members, why would he care about their lives? Wuxia sighed again. "All right, let's talk about this later. I'm going to West Chu this time to deal with those bastards from the Earth Demon Hall. I'm going to let Mei Las and Chu Xiu go." "You don't need to go. Otherwise, they'll say that I bullied people again." Chu Wuji nodded. He also knew that it would be a bit troublesome if he went. Mei Qinglian was the only successor of the Immortal clan, so she could naturally go. Representing Wuxia's clan to West Chu, Chu Xiu and Chu Wuji could actually go. However, Chu Wuji had been famous for a long time. Although he was a martial Dao grandmaster, he was one of the strongest martial Dao grandmasters. Like Northern Yan Xiangwu and Great Light Temple's Su Du, he had the qualifications to fight with true fire spirit refinement realm experts. So if Chu Wuji went, it would most likely incur the dissatisfaction of the others. Although Chu Xiu had the battle record of killing a true fire spirit refinement realm expert, his age and seniority were all here. Chu Wuji couldn't do it. If it was Chu Xiu who also couldn't do it, then they would be going a bit too far. On the morning of the second day, the people sent by the few big bosses of evil Dao had already gathered in the central hall. As the direct descendants of those big bosses of evil Dao, almost all of them had the strength of a martial Dao grandmaster. Of course, there were other martial artists of the Immortal clan, such as Mei Qinglian. Her Immortal clan called itself a clan, but she was the only one left in the entire Immortal clan. Moreover, she was close to Wuxia, so she could also be considered as a member of Wuxia's clan. Of course, the strength of these other branches of the Immortal clan might not be too strong. The better ones had martial Dao Grand Masters. The worse ones couldn't even find a martial Dao Grand Master. They could only send one of them to follow behind and maybe they could get some benefits. So at this time, there were nearly 100 people gathered in the hall, among which there were a total of 10 martial Dao Grand Masters. Seeing Chu Xiu's arrival, the expressions of everyone present changed subtly, especially the other martial Dao Grand Masters. Compared to Chu Xiu, they were all martial artists of the previous generation, but in the end, a junior like Chu Xiu was standing in the same position as them, which made them feel a little awkward. At this time, a middle-aged martial artist with a slender figure and red pupils in a black robe stood out and coughed, "Everyone, since everyone is here, then we should discuss how to make a move. The things that the old ancestors have given us should be done quickly. If the battle between the righteous and demonic paths is delayed because of those bastards of the Earth Demon Hall, wouldn't it be a pity? However, that group of bastards has multiplied in West Chu for hundreds of years, their power has already been deeply rooted, and they have also submitted to the West Chu Imperial Court. It will be a little difficult to get rid of them in one go. So before we make a move, we should prepare everything. I have already asked my good friend, the rogue cultivator of the West Chu Devil Path, Shadow Blade esteemed Si Kuang to inquire about that group of bastards. We will first make a rough plan, and when we arrive at the place and get the information, we will modify it and make a move immediately." Hearing this middle-aged martial artist's words, Chu Xiu immediately frowned. Where did this guy come from? He came up with an "I'm already prepared, and you all have to listen to my commands" look. He really doesn't know what he is talking about. But as he said this, a small half of the martial artists present nodded, as if they were quite in agreement. Chapter 742. This time, Chu Xiu really didn't plan to stand out, but it seemed that someone was more high-profile than him. Chu Xiu sent a voice transmission to Mr. Lu, who was beside him. "Who is this guy? Is he powerful?" Mr. Lu came here on behalf of the Phaseless Demon sect. He was a new martial arts master of the sect. Although he wasn't the strongest, he definitely had the greatest potential. Therefore, this kind of mission that was not very dangerous but had obvious benefits was usually carried out by Mr. Lu. Mr. Lu looked at Chu Xiu in surprise and said, "You don't know him? Then you must have heard of his master. He's the 10 Directions Old Devil, Yuan Tianfang of the Devil Cliff Cave in the East Pole Mountain. He was already a big shot in the Jianghu decades ago. He's Yuan Tianfang's eldest disciple, 9 Red Abyss Xing Situ. He used to be ranked more than 40 on the ranking list, but because he dared to kill the disciples of the 5 major sword sects to forge swords, he was chased for thousands of miles. Therefore, he has been hiding in the dark and was removed from the ranking list." Hearing Mr. Lu's words, Chu Xiu finally had some impression of him. After all, there were only so many powerhouses in the Jianghu. His master, 10 Directions Old Devil, Yuan Tianfang, was a powerhouse in the true fire spirit refinement state. He was also the big shot who shouted at the East Emperor yesterday and asked for help. He became famous a few decades ago. After stepping into the true fire spirit refinement state, he defeated 2 powerhouses in the true fire spirit refinement state from the true martial sect and the Chunyang Dao sect, crippling one and seriously injuring the other. However, when he attacked Longhu Mountain, he was hit by an old Daoist who served the old Daoist master with a horsetail whisk. Since then, he fled to the Devil Cliff Cave in the East Pole Mountain in the East Sea to recuperate and cultivate. It seemed that he also took in many disciples. And Xing Situ was very bold like his master. His nickname was the 9 Red Abyss. In fact, this was the name of the 2 murderous demon swords. They were once divine weapons refined by the Kunlun devil cult, but they were destroyed during the demon-slaying war. After obtaining the forging method from Yuan Tianfang, Xing Situ began collecting materials. In order to speed up the process, he slaughtered the disciples of the 5 major sword sects and used their blood to forge the sword. Although he succeeded in forging the sword in the end, the cultivators from the 5 great sword factions chased after him for a distance of over 500 kilometers. He dared not show himself for over a decade. Generally speaking, this pair of master and disciple were extremely daring people, but at the same time, they had an extremely high reputation in the hidden devil clan. After all, they had killed their way out of a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. Of course, from Chu Xiu's point of view, and even Mr. Lu's point of view, the actions of the master and disciple were not as good as those of Chu Xiu. In the past, the number of people Chu Xiu had provoked might not be less than theirs. At that time, Chu Xiu could also choose to hide underground and wait for a few decades to pass before coming out again. In any case, his cultivation was high enough and his lifespan was sufficient. But Chu Xiu chose to gather all his strength and fight against the alliance of the righteous sects. In the end, he won and could walk in the Jianghu openly. He was more daring than the master and disciple. Although the 2 of them acted crazily, they ran away after the madness, which was somewhat anticlimactic. Chu Xiu chuckled. So what if he was famous? Back then, he was chased all over the Jianghu. Now he came out to pretend to be a senior. On the other side, Xing Situ was talking about his plan, but Chu Xiu's laughter was extremely harsh, which made him frown. Chu Xiu, what are you laughing at? Ignoring him, Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, let's go. With that, Chu Xiu, Mei Qinglian, and Mr. Lu left with some of the Diabolism warriors who were on good terms with Wei Shuya. Xing Situ said angrily, Chu Xiu. What do you mean? You want to leave before the task given by the great ancestors is completed? What are you trying to do? Chu Xiu turned around and said lightly, to complete the task, of course. The great ancestors didn't say who would be in charge of this matter. What are you doing standing here and telling us what to do? Of course, I'm a kind person. I won't stop you if you want to be the commander, but don't think about ordering me. Who knows if you will use your position for personal gain and deliberately send people you don't know to die? Or if you will monopolize most of the treasures in the end? None of the people present were idiots. They had thought about what Chu Xiu said before. Xing Situ had taken the lead with a show of strength. Of course, it wasn't out of goodwill that he wanted to be the commander, but because everyone was in a state of disunity. If Xing Situ were to be the commander, he would be the one to take the initiative. However, most of the people present didn't want to offend Situ Xing, so they didn't say anything. They didn't expect Chu Xiu to say it so directly. Xing Situ pointed at Chu Xiu, and his face was instantly filled with anger. Nonsense. Why would I secretly plot against my fellow disciples when we are in a crisis? In fact, Chu Xiu really thought too much of Xing Situ. He really didn't want to harm anyone. The people present were all the trusted successors of the various big shots of the Yinma bloodline, and there were also some well-known branches of the Yinma bloodline. It was hard to say which one of them was angered, so he just wanted to get some benefits at the end. At least half of Chu Xiu's words were slander against him. Chu Xiu waved a hand casually. I don't care if that's what you think, but it's impossible for us to all listen to you. The forefather wants results, not the process. It doesn't matter if we attack together or not, as long as we get rid of the remaining evildoers in the end, everything will be fine. So now, let's get ready to move. If you want to follow, don't listen and don't cause trouble, then I won't refuse you. If you want to cause trouble, then get out of the way. Otherwise, it won't look good on everyone. Xing Situ stood up and said coldly, that's easy for you to say. If you take some people with you, everyone's strength will be lacking. If we fail the mission, all of us will be implicated, and the Yinma clan will be humiliated. Then what else do you want? Chu Xiu smiled coldly. You can go, but the others stay. The atmosphere instantly became tense. Two long swords, one black and one red, appeared in Xing Situ's hands. You want people to stay? You think you're worthy? You didn't even dare show your face when you were chased by the righteous sects, but now you dare to be rude to me? Chu Xiu. You're courting death. Xing Situ snorted and slashed out with his two swords. One of them carried a murderous aura, and when it was unsheathed, there was even a surge of blood-red light. It was a terrifying sight. The other carried a deep aura of death. When it slashed out, the sound of ghosts wailing and gods howling filled the air. It was a terrifying sight. In order to forge these two demonic weapons, Xing Situ had killed countless people and had even been chased for thousands of miles. But now that the 9-yin red abyss had appeared, it was indeed worthy of the price he had paid. Chu Xiu formed a seal with both hands, and his body shone with a dazzling golden Buddhist light. His qi and blood were boiling, and the great sun-changing technique was unleashed. Behind Chu Xiu, the Vairocana Dharma idol coalesced, and the colorless fixed palm imprint was formed. In an instant, the universe was reversed. The golden Buddhist light twisted everything, and the power destroyed the murderous aura and the boundless demonic aura. With Chu Xiu and Xing Situ at the center, their stellar energy exploded. If it wasn't for the protective formation in the underground palace, their attacks would have completely destroyed the place. Chu Xiu didn't move, and neither did Xing Situ. However, he had already sheathed his two swords and covered his hands in his robes, afraid that others would see his trembling hands. There was a sudden silence. Chu Xiu's reputation had spread far and wide. He had killed a cultivator at the true fire spirit refinement realm. Although he had used some tricks, a battle record was a battle record. At least he had the strength to do so. Now that they had seen Chu Xiu in action, the power he displayed was indeed worthy of Chu Xiu's reputation. Everyone knew that Chu Xiu cultivated all three paths of Taoism, Buddhism, and demonic. Right now, Chu Xiu was only using a Buddhist technique to fight evenly with Xing Situ, a demonic grandmaster who had once been ranked on the golden list. If he used his famous demonic blade, even Xing Situ might not be able to withstand it. Of course, they didn't know that even now, Xing Situ was barely holding his own. Chu Xiu said coldly, "Xing Situ, put away your useless schemes. The war between the righteous and demonic factions is about to begin, and you're still trying to play your little tricks? I don't have the time to play with you. We'll wipe out the remnants of the Earth Demon Hall based on our own abilities. I can't be bothered with you, so don't provoke me." With that, Chu Xiu waved his hand. Mei Qinglian and Mr. Lu followed Chu Xiu and left. Those who had good relations with Wei Shiya's faction naturally chose to follow Chu Xiu. There were also some weaker cultivators who thought about it and chose to follow Chu Xiu. At this moment, a young man in his 30s, who was dressed in a crimson robe, suddenly revealed a smile on his face as he followed behind Chu Xiu and the others. Of the 10 martial Dao grandmasters present, 4 chose to follow Chu Xiu, and the remaining 30 or so cultivators chose to leave with Chu Xiu. Xing Situ's face was ashen. Chu Xiu had only joined the Yinma clan for a short period of time. How could he gather so many people to follow him? In fact, Xing Situ thought too much. The others chose to follow Chu Xiu purely because his reputation in the Yinma clan wasn't very good. As for Chu Xiu, his reputation was only bad in the righteous Dao sects. He had never harmed anyone in the Yinma clan. Moreover, with the strength that Chu Xiu displayed just now, although his foundation and connections in the Yinma clan weren't obvious, it was enough to make some people choose to follow him. After leaving the hall, Mr. Lu looked curiously at the young man in the crimson robe. He said in surprise, "Shen Xuaning, why did you come? I remember that the ancestor of your Scarlet Drill demonic sect seems to have a good relationship with Yuan Tianfang. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled Sword Will YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories."